At dusk, the villagers of a small village were harvesting their crops, waving their rakes in the field. One of the farmers, wiping sweat from his forehead, called out to his son. The boy, sorting the crops, answered his father's call. With a huge smile on his face, he asked what was wrong. The father replied that they were done for the day and called the boy home, to which he agreed. The woman who was working with the boys began to praise the young man for the fact that at such a young age, he was working hard without getting his hands dirty. Leaving, the boy replied that he was doing his best. After saying goodbye to everyone, the boy went in the direction of home. His name is Xiao-En, but he's not from this world. In his past life, he was a genius programmer of the 21st century. His whole room was shrouded in a bunch of wires, and huge monitors obscured the walls. Unfortunately, our hero was unlucky, and due to an accident, he died. After his death, he woke up as a young boy in a medieval world. He began to examine his new body, not believing what was happening. As he began his new life, he learned that he lived in a village of peasants who paid taxes to the lord of the village land. The boy knew little about the world he found himself in. He explored it by walking with his new father. Walking with his son, the father, frozen with horror. Cold sweat trickled down his bewildered face. The boy also froze at what he saw. He didn't understand what was happening. Looking up, they saw a huge mechanism falling from the sky, which resembled the shape of a hemisphere. The mechanism was hurtling towards the earth at a great speed. The father, realizing the danger, rushed to cover his son. Completely burning, the huge hemisphere flew past the village. It kept its course towards the mountain. On reaching the ground, the hemisphere exploded, causing a huge explosion. The villagers were distraught by this. They didn't know what to do. After the explosion of the belt, they saw something incredible there. Something they couldn't believe. Realizing that the danger was over, the villagers headed towards the scene. As he continued to stare at the sight of the explosion, the boy's eyes glistened. Night had fallen at the village. In a small hut, smoke was oozing from the chimney and lights were burning. This is the home of our hero. Father and son were eating dinner at the table, replenishing their strength after a busy day. The father warned his son not to go near the mountain until the Lord returned. Presenting a bowl of soup, the father asked his son to obey the Lord's instruction, for he was the ruler of their village. The boy promised his father that he would obey him. While eating the soup, the father smilingly looked at his son. He was reminded of his wife, who had left them so early. As he continued eating, the boy was thinking about something. His father asked him to have a good rest tomorrow. The boy said he would listen to him. Putting on a dark cloak and leading a white horse in the middle of the night, the boy assumed that since his father was asleep, he wouldn't mind if he used his treasure. The horse was the only thing of value in their family. It was very fast and strong. The boy rode it confidently through the forest. Fortunately, his father had managed to teach him how to ride. The lad's skills were top-notch. As he continued to ride, the boy rode deeper and deeper into the forest. Determination did not leave him for a second because he definitely saw a UFO. The UFO he saw could be related to how he got to the new world. Upon reaching his destination, the guy saw a huge crater that contained an object that had collapsed from the sky. The guy didn't regret breaking the promise he made to his father. If he continued to wait for the Lord's return, he wouldn't be able to find any information. As he approached the crash site and picked through the rubble, the lad found a small box. He reached out to examine it. The boy began to examine the box. He was surprised at how strong it was. It wasn't even damaged. After spinning it around a bit, he realized there was something inside. When he finished examining it, he decided to return home, taking the unknown box with him. He climbed out of the crater and got on his horse and rode home. When he got home, the boy excitedly opened the box. In the box, he saw a solar panel, which he took out and found the inscription "Made in China." He was worried. Could this be a box from the future? The box also contained something that looked like virtual reality glasses, which also had "Made in China" written on. Taking the goggles in his hands, the guy began to examine them. The glasses were without a single scratch. He was again surprised by the sturdiness of the box that was able to protect the glasses in the crash. After a little thought, the guy decided to try the glasses on, but when he put them on, he didn't notice anything special. Running his hand over the goggles, he noticed a button that he pressed. When he pressed the button, the glasses made a soft sound. A matrix of blue color began to fill the room. The guy looking around watched as the matrix gradually filled his room. Standing in the middle of the projected place, he noticed a mechanism from which someone began to appear. A pretty girl appeared in front of him. Sitting on a broomstick, she floated in the air. Greeting the guy, the girl said that the whole place was a lobby. The girl explained to the guy that they were in a multifunctional learning machine. Turning back around, the guy saw a monolithic rock. He began to ponder, what the hell is a learning machine? It all seemed unreal to him. What was this place he was in? Could this place be virtual space? And was the girl who flew above him on a broomstick a person? Approaching the monolithic stone, the guy realized that although the 21st century has the technology of virtual space, but they are far from it. This space must have been created far in the future. The girl began to explain to the guy that the place they were in was the lobby of a learning device, and she was an artificial intelligence system called Alice. Alice asked the guy what he would be learning today. The guy smiled and said hello to Alice. He asked her again if she was definitely an artificial intelligence. Puzzled, the guy thought he was in some educational game for children, to which Alice replied that it was not that at all. Alice started demonstrating skills for learning. She asked the guy to pick if he liked something. She could transfer all kinds of skills to him and also help him learn. She could help him improve physically and mentally. After showing the guy the whole list of skills, Alice asked him to choose what he wanted to learn. The guy couldn't believe his eyes. So many skills. With such resources, he would be able to do so much. Admiringly, he looked at Alice, who was showing him a huge amount of skills. With such a huge amount of teachings, he was comparable to a cheater. Looking at the proposed skills, the guy noticed chemistry and math, but did not choose them, as he was not sure that in the future they will be useful to him. Looking a bit more, he noticed the skill landing. The boy hesitantly went to the system window to select the skill. Taking the skill, he was worried that even after being reborn, he would have to learn. A little resentful, he still took the skill. After he took the landing, Alice warned him, this skill is a third-level gardening skill, and to learn it, he needs to master the foundation of this science. The boy was puzzled. Is there really any other requirement? He told Alice that he didn't have much time. Is there any way to learn the skill at once? Alice told him that he could only learn the skill if he already knew the basics of gardening. The guy replied that there would be no problem with it because he has been working in the field for a long time and already knows a lot of things. Alice agreed with his decision. She hoped that he would succeed and started the activation of the skill. The boy was overjoyed. In this life, he should be a farmer and live his routine days in peace. But unfortunately, it didn't work. The system gave an error. The system window showed that the selected data had been lost. The guy was tense. He began to realize that it wasn't going to be that easy. Pointing at the system window, the guy asked Alice, what does it mean? Why is the skill unavailable to him? Alice replied that maybe there was some kind of data error. She asked the guy to choose something else. The guy agreed to choose basic math, and the system again replied that the data was lost. After that, the guy tried to choose basic chemistry, as well as basic combat, but the system kept repeating that the data had been lost. The guy grabbed his head and didn't realize what he could even learn. Elsa asked the guy to wait. The system is searching. After the search was finished, they learned that the guy had access to all the protected data. After finishing the search, the system offered a choice of 2 skills, Chinese chess and stretching. The guy was furious. He was adamantly opposed. He said he wouldn't learn these useless skills. 10 hours later, the guy and Alice were finishing another game of Chinese chess. The sound of checkers hitting the board echoed throughout the space. The game was tense, but the guy still managed to checkmate Alice. Alice, clapping her hands, congratulated the guy. He had learned basic Chinese chess. She offered him to continue his training to intermediate Chinese chess. Smiling, the guy agreed. He really enjoyed playing games with Alice. The smile disappeared from the guy's face. He had a worried look on his face. Looking at Alice, continuing to ponder, he remembered something important. Alice showed the guy the scoreboard with the current time. She asked if everything was okay. The guy looked at the scoreboard and wondered. If he had been here for 10 hours, it was already morning. The guy had to get back soon. Fumbling with the matrix, he tried to find a way out. He asked Alice where the exit was. Alice asked him to calm down. She told him that the multifunctional learning machine had a passive learning function, so he didn't have to worry about the time outside. The guy looked at Alice in surprise. He began to wonder, what the hell is passive learning? Alice began to tell him that this function changes the time ratio of the real and virtual world, slowing down or speeding up the time in the virtual world. Theoretically, the time ratio can be changed to infinity. She showed the guy 2 system windows, one of which depicted the real world, and the other the current one in the learning machine. Alice said that time would go much faster here than in the real world. The guy had been in the machine for 10 hours, but in the real world, it wasn't even dawn yet. The guy asked if he could set it up himself. Alice told him he could adjust the ratio indefinitely. This news pleased the guy. He could stay in the car for a long time and learn more skills. He asked Alice to adjust the ratio to 1 to 1,000. After that, they can play another game of Chinese chess. Alice flew up to the guy and questioned him. Is he sure of such a large ratio? Changing the time ratio stressed the guy's body and brain. Overdoing it could cause serious damage to his body. She warned him about the risk of his brain exploding. He could also get confusion, paralysis, blood clots in his blood vessels, all of which could have unfortunate results. The boy's face turned pale at what he heard. He answered Alice that under such circumstances, 1 in 1,000 he did not need. He asked her to find a suitable ratio. Alice flew right up to the guy and began to feel his cheek. The kid's eyes started to run and his face turned red. The boy became nervous, and then he jumped away from Alice. Landing on the floor, he crawled away from her, asking her what she was doing. Alice crouched down and replied that she was scanning him. The guy asked her if it was definitely called scanning. Sticking out her tongue, Alice replied that the guy's body was perfectly fine. He would be able to handle a change in the 1-to-2 ratio. Calming down, the guy asked to adjust the ratio while he goes to sleep. He has to work during the day, so he needs to gain strength. Alice asked the guy not to worry. When he connects to the system, his body goes into a deep sleep and recovery state. Alice finished setting up the time ratio. She showed the guy the system window with the skill stretching and advised him to start learning the beginning stage of this skill. Alice told the guy that this skill would help improve his physical performance and promote intensive brain development. The guy, after visualizing the picture of him exercising at the stadium, was not very eager to choose this skill. He asked Alice not to study this skill. Alice, slyly looking at the guy, smirking, asked him if he was sure of his choice. She started telling the guy that after the first lesson, he would be able to customize the 1-to-3 ratio and even more. The guy immediately agreed. He promised he would learn everything. Alice began the transformation. She was already standing in front of the guy's face in her teacher's uniform. She was pleased by his enthusiasm and offered to start learning the skill right away. Alice slapped the boy's butt with the pointer. He shouted, what was she going to do? And why did she change her clothes? Alyssa replied that they were beginning to learn the first section of the beginning stretching course. The entire space in the car was filled with the screams of practice. Alyssa sprung the boy to get him moving more and trying harder. After finishing the workout with trembling hands, the guy put the virtual reality goggles on the table. Putting the glasses down, he started screaming across the room. He didn't understand what this inhuman skill was. His whole body was aching. There was no strength. Holding onto the chair with his left hand and his right hand on his back, the guy remembered his exercise routine he did in school. Stretching didn't look anything like that. Taking the chair by the leg with one hand, the guy thought, if it develops a person's inner potential, then it should restore the body after exertion. The guy proceeded to warm up the body. He tried the warrior pose as well as the wheel pose. As he continued the warm-up, the guy shouted out that it was a real miracle. The pain in his body really went away. But after a short time, his body was covered with sweat, and he started to feel short of breath. The guy's blood pressure spiked. The boy's father, walking up to the room, knocked on the door. He was proud that his son had grown up, and now he was closing doors. He yelled to the kid that it was time to get up and go to work. The father's shouts woke the boy up. He was lying on the bed, barely alive. The boy with his hand on his head continued to lie there. The father opened the door and went over to him. He asked his son if he was all right. The boy with his hand on his head replied that he was very tired and wanted to sleep. The father put his hand on his son's head to check his temperature. After making sure he had no fever, he left him alone. The father asked the boy to gain strength. He himself would work in the fields today. After lying down for a while, the boy decided to get up. He didn't understand what was wrong with him. His body had recovered. Why was he so tired? And why was his head still spinning? As he pondered what was wrong with his well-being, his eyes fell on the box. He decided to ask Alice about his ailment. Putting on his glasses, the guy headed back into the Matrix. Upon entering the space, the guy saw Alice flying on a broomstick in front of him, who greeted him. She praised the guy for practicing hard even on the outside. Waving his arms, the guy wondered how Alice knew about his training. Alice opened the windows of the system in front of her. She said that most of the information was lost. Because of this, she collects data from the outside world. The guy turned completely pale. He grabbed his heart with his hand and asked Alice, does she really see everything he does? Alice smirked, wagging her finger, and replied that she only collects useful data. She doesn't need to know what the kid is doing. To the boy, her words sounded hurtful. Flying up to the guy, Alice began to feel him all over his body. Based on her findings, one could tell that his body characteristics were unusual for this world. She suggested that the guy become a cultivator. Cultivation is the process of using difficult conditions to develop the body. It is conducive to achieving one's goals. The guy was thrilled to have such an opportunity. Alice once again confirmed that he was suitable for the role of a persistent cultivator. The boy asked Alice why he was so sleepy after a light stretching. Alice immediately changed into her teacher's clothes, took out a pointer, and pointing it at the mannequin, began to tell him, the energy he expends in this space is quickly restored in sleep, but the energy he uses in reality takes a long time to recover. Bringing the pointer to the mannequin's head, Alice continued the story. Physical strength and mind are connected. If the energy consumption exceeds the norm, the body plunges into self-support mode. into a state of sleep. The guy realized that in space he could exhaust himself as much as he wanted, but if he got tired in reality, he would need to rest. Alice tapped the guy on the head with a pointer and told him that he had forgotten about the passive training method. By training his body in space, he becomes stronger on the outside. The boy, stroking the place where Alice had hit with his hand, said that he had thought otherwise. He thought the method was completely useless in reality. Alice looked at the guy's body readings in the system window. She was convinced that the method of training in space was very useful. The physical ability of the guy's body was already better than most adult humans. The guy cheered up at what he heard. Since the training gives such a progress, he was to start it right away. Sometime after starting the training, the guy collapsed to the ground from helplessness. He couldn't continue practice. Alice, standing behind the guy with a whip in her hands, glared menacingly at him. Striking the whip against the ground, she said that the guy was weak. Looking at the guy prejudicially, Alice said that when they get to the second part, his energy expenditure will increase. In his current state, he wasn't reaching the minimum requirement. Alice walked over to the guy and lifted his chin with the pointer. Smiling, she said, "The guy should tighten up the first part a bit and he'll catch up with the material." Alice began the transformation. Her image of the stern teacher began to change. Stockings with a short skirt turned into fitness tights and a white blouse on a pink top. Changing from teacher to fitness trainer, she said they only had 6 hours. Was the guy ready to work out? The guy, on the other hand, didn't realize how Alice was changing images so quickly. Starting the workout, the guy began to do the exercises. Alice watched his technique carefully, clearly controlling the guy's movement. Alice leaned over to the guy to help him hold the bridge pose. Her breast pressed into the guy's face, blocking his breath. Gasping, the guy grumbled that he couldn't continue with the exercise. Alice replied that he was a cultivator. It was his duty to overcome obstacles. Unable to continue practicing in this style, the guy shoved Alice away from him. He shouted that he knew everything himself and he could handle it from here. The guy decided to call it a day and leave the space. Alice tried to catch up with him, but didn't have time. Once in the real world, the guy, wiping sweat from his forehead, said, "This method of training with Alice, dangerous." After calming down a bit, clenching his hand into a fist, he noticed his energy had completely recovered. The passive training method was a great thing. Standing in a fighting stance, the guy looked at the barrel. He decided that it was time to find out what he was capable of. The guy continued to stare at the barrel. It was half filled with water. Finding a bucket, the boy began to fill the barrel completely. Carrying water from the river, he almost completely filled the barrel. While carrying the water, the guy noticed that he became many times stronger. It takes 7.5 buckets to fill a full barrel. Before he had little strength, he had to carry half a bucket. He ran back and forth more than 12 times. After practicing with Alice, he now carries a full bucket. Moreover, the route from the house to the river was now faster, thanks to the guy's stamina. Looking at his strong body, the guy didn't regret choosing the stretching skill. The boy's father was carrying a large bundle of firewood while walking along a forest path. He heard his son calling him in the distance. The father, exhausted from work, turned around. He saw someone running towards him with great speed. When he looked closely, he saw it. It was his son, Xiao-en. After reaching his father, the boy began to snatch the bundle of firewood from his father's hand. The father tried to convince his son that he couldn't lift such a heavy load. The boy did not listen to his father, grabbed the wood, and ran. The father was puzzled by what he saw. That's how, day after day, the boy continued to train. During the day, he helped his father with his work, and at night, he practiced with Alice. His father did not understand what was happening to his son. Where did he get so much strength? With a smile on his face, he thought of his wife. Does she see from heaven how their Xiao-en has matured? The guy covered himself with a blanket and lay on the bed. He was wearing virtual reality goggles. He was practicing spatialization with Alice again. The guy was performing the exercise plank on one arm. Alice, standing beside him, was looking at the system window, counting down the time to complete the exercise. The guy, standing in the plank, was sweating profusely. He was sure that this was the longest minute of his life. Finally, the time expired. The guy exhaled and collapsed on the floor. Looking at the characteristics of the guy's body, Alice praised him. He was able to master the second lesson in just 40 days. Lifting up slightly, the guy asked Alice why did he feel like she wasn't sincere. Alice smirked. She said that her main rule was honesty, and she praised him sincerely. Fully back on his feet, kneading his body, the guy asked Alice if he could change the ratio now. Alice asked for a moment. Alice began readjusting the ratio. The guy closed his eyes, waiting for the result. When the reconfiguration was complete, the system set the ratio to 1:1. Hearing this, the guy waved his hand. A bright light came from Alice, not understanding what he was doing, assumed he was trying to take off. Finished trying to do something, the guy asked. Why doesn't he feel any change when he changes the ratio? Alice, pointing to the system window, told the guy that he has been through a lot of training, now he can take the strain. But if he wanted to feel something, she could arrange it. The guy had time to visualize a lot of things. In a trembling voice, he asked Alice not to arrange anything. Alice smiled in response. Since the guy had been performing well lately, she suggested learning a new skill for him. The guy was interested. Expanding the skill system windows, she pointed to the skill firewood harvesting. The guy was unfazed at the suggestion. Alice started designing an axe. She told the guy that she had time to collect information and create a primary database. After an initial analysis of the guy's abilities, she created a suitable skill. Alice asked the guy to pick up the axe. The guy took the healthy axe in both hands. Looking at the axe, he realized that there was a training inventory here, but the axe he held in his hands was different from the usual one. Alice thought the axe looked good, so she projected it. The boy was upset. He had been through so much for chopping wood. He thought he was going to fight left and right, but that wasn't the case. Alice started projecting a new prop, which turned out to be a log. The guy clutched the axe with all his might and was ready to start training. After a while, the guy was completely exhausted. He was so hot that he had to undress. He asked Alice how she was feeling. Alice was also exhausted, but there was no choice. Training in the heat is much more effective. The guy with severe shortness of breath tried to say something. Chopping another log, he shouted that he couldn't take it anymore. The guy and Alice stood in the middle of a huge pile of logs. Alice counted a total of 765 logs. Throwing back the axe, the guy collapsed to the floor. He shouted that for 12 hours he had been chopping wood. He had never been so tired before, not even on a 10-kilometer run. Alice told the boy not to get upset. He has extraordinary stamina. Even she can barely keep up with him. Now Alice could check the energy in the guy's body. Standing on his feet, the guy felt the power overwhelming him. His body was incredibly light. Alice reminded the guy that in the real world, he was in a dream state. He might not have to worry about muscle. Back in the real world, the guy, sitting on the bed, was thinking about something. Suddenly, a fly came into the guy's field of vision. The guy's pupils narrowed. He caught his breath and watched the fly intently. Literally in an instant, he grabbed the fly with his finger. Smearing the fly, the guy realized that not only had his strength grown, but also his reaction. Walking outside, the lad saw his father chopping wood. The father noticed him. He asked his son why he was up so early today. He then asked his son to go and have breakfast. The boy continued to stand looking at the firewood. He told his father that he did not want to go to the field today. The father stacked the logs and told him that he could rest today. The boy took an axe in his hands and told his father that he wanted to chop some firewood to sell to the knight's estate, which was always buying it. The father looked at his son and said that chopping wood requires strength, and he was not strong enough to do it. The boy did not listen to his father. Holding the axe, he looked at the log. The boy swung the axe. When he hit the log, it split in two. The guy kept chopping wood one by one. The father turned pale. After a while, the guy stopped. He said that he had grown up and had become very strong. The father was shining with happiness. He couldn't believe that his little boy had already grown up. Continuing to look at his son, who was chopping wood, the father was completely convinced that Xiao-En had grown up. The boy continued chopping wood. Joey's aunt walked into their yard. She asked the boy why he was chopping wood alone. Where is his father? The boy greeted his aunt. He told her that he wanted to chop some wood to sell, but his father had already gone to the field. Auntie came up to this boy and put a basket of food on a stump. She said that she had cooked a lot today, and asked the boy to eat with his father because he was still growing, so he needed it. The boy looked at his aunt and smiled. He knew she liked his father. Auntie always uses the excuse of food to see his father. The boy looked at his aunt's sad face. Unfortunately, his father is always avoiding her, probably because he can't forget his beloved. Auntie remembered that she wanted to ask the boy's father to borrow a horse to go to the manor. She asked the lad to convey her request to his father. The boy, eating the food she brought in, asked Auntie, "Didn't she go there recently?" Auntie smilingly replied that her brother had returned and he wanted to take some students. There are 3 young boys in the village and they want to go with her. The boy was happy that his uncle Vanel was back. He began to ask his aunt how he had gotten his blacksmithing training. Auntie said it went well. He opened his own blacksmith shop on the estate. The boy began to ponder. In addition to the lord receiving the title of knight, a top-tier blacksmith is the 2nd highest ranking title. It wouldn't be a bad idea to become Uncle's apprentice. The boy shouted inspiringly. He wants to become Uncle Vanel's apprentice too. Their conversation was interrupted by his father, who was carrying firewood on his shoulder. He asked Auntie what she was doing here. Had his son done something wrong? Auntie replied that there was nothing to worry about. She began to tell the boy's father that her brother had returned and she had come here to borrow a horse to take the 3 students to the manor. The boy got into the conversation. He told his father he wanted to be Uncle Vanel's apprentice too. The father threw the wood off his shoulder, saying that this was utter nonsense. He began to explain to his son that Vinel is a blacksmith of the highest caliber, second only to the manor owner in status. His apprentices are not easy people either. The boy should stay out of it. Auntie stood up for the boy. She asked his father not to be so strict. The boy kept insisting that he was strong enough to become Uncle Vanel's apprentice. He cited his stamina as his reasoning. The father, looking at the pile of chopped logs, the aunt came closer to the lad's father. Praising the lad, she asked his father to let him go to the manor. After all, it was worth a try. The father decided not to argue. He allowed the boy to try to become an apprentice. The boy jumped up and down with joy. He thanked his father, telling him he wouldn't let him down. After he finished talking, the boy went to Alice's house. He warned her that he would soon go to the blacksmith to become his apprentice. He asked Alice when he could start learning how to make perfect firewood. Alice, praising herself, replied that it was too early for the lad to learn this skill. The boy holding the axe in his hands didn't understand what the problem was. It's just chopping wood. Alice snatched the axe from the guy's hands and decided to show this skill in perfect form. Throwing the log upwards, she asked the boy to watch carefully, warning him that she wouldn't repeat it again. The log, which was in the air, was instantly chopped into a dozen perfect pieces. After the blows, Alice landed elegantly on the ground. Showing the guy the perfectly chopped log, she asked him if a man could do such a thing. Passing the axe into the guy's hands, she told him that his desire to become a blacksmith's apprentice was extremely reasonable. That way he would be able to improve his body's abilities and master perfect firewood making. The boy agreed with Alice, but blacksmith Vanel might not be willing to work with him. Alice encouraged the lad, saying that his hard training had paid off and the blacksmith would definitely accept him. The boy confidently decided that becoming a blacksmith's apprentice would be his first step towards becoming the strongest. The day of departure had come. Arriving at the meeting place, the boy saw his aunt and 3 other apprentices. Leading a horse behind him, the lad approached them. The aunt asked him if he was ready for the trip. The boy replied that he was completely ready. Behind the boy stood a concerned father. Auntie asked the father to relax. If her brother didn't accept Xiao En, she would bring him back safely. The boy ran up to his father. He was going to tell him something. The boy, in his ear, whispered in his father's ear to take care of Auntie Joey. The blushing father tapped Guy on the back of the head and told him to cut the crap. It was time for the shipment. Mounting their horses, the boys rode down the road. As they rode away, the lad waved to his father. After traveling a long way, the boys reached the homestead. Entering the town, the lad began to look around at everything around him. There were crowds of people walking around the town. The lad was delighted. It was the first time he was able to see such a lively place. After walking around the city for a bit, they headed to Vinel's forge. After reaching the forge, Auntie helped the lad get off the skakun and then called her brother. The blacksmith Vinel was forging another masterpiece. He was glad that his sister had arrived. The blacksmith went to meet the boys. When he came out of the forge, he saw his sister and 4 boys. The blacksmith looked at the arriving apprentices with a formidable gaze. The 3 disciples were startled by such a cold greeting. Xiao En looked straight at the blacksmith's formidable figure with determination in his eyes. After greeting the guys, the blacksmith went to hug his little sister. He was so happy that she had finally come to him. Auntie tried to shove the big man away from her, as she was not quite comfortable in front of the children. Pulling himself together, the blacksmith suggested that his little sister stay here for a while. She replied that she couldn't, as she still had a lot to do in the village. Auntie began to show off the boys she had brought. She hoped that her brother would be matched with someone. The blacksmith looked at the first boy. He didn't like him very much. Then the blacksmith looked at the second guy. He liked him. After that, he looked at the third guy. The one playing with his muscles managed to catch the blacksmith's attention. The blacksmith lowered his head down and looked at our hero, thinking it was some kind of monkey. Looking at the guy, the blacksmith said that he only recruits the strongest young men as apprentices. This is not a kindergarten recruit. Everyone around started laughing, but Xiao En continued to stand resolute. Unsure, Auntie introduced the young man to the blacksmith, saying that he was Beng's son. The blacksmith started laughing loudly at what he heard. The blacksmith's laughter was interrupted by the thought that he was the son of someone his sister liked. Quickly changing his mood, the blacksmith, stroking the lad's head, began to ask how he was doing. Pinching the guy's cheeks, the blacksmith apologized for not recognizing. The boy replied that it was no big deal, since they had seen each other when he was 5 years old. The blacksmith brought a bunch of axes, hammers, and knives. He said he couldn't not give him something. Holding a huge pile of tools in his hands, the guy started to refuse, saying that they had enough at home. Realizing that the lad had not been placated with gifts, the blacksmith suggested that he take a walk around the manor. He would buy him something tasty. Auntie looked angrily at the blacksmith. She decided to stop this whole circus. She brought Xiao En over for the blacksmith to take him as an apprentice. The blacksmith couldn't believe what he heard. He immediately said that becoming an apprentice would not work for the young man because it was too difficult. The boy did not back down. He confidently declared that he was not afraid of difficulty. Crouching down to this boy, the blacksmith began to explain to him that he was still too young. He would not be strong enough for blacksmith. The lad continued to insist. He wants to give it a try. The blacksmith, looking at his sister, had to agree. The blacksmith praised the young boy for his persistence and then called everyone to follow him. There were many people gathered around the forge. They were all discussing Vanel's new apprentices. People were sure that none of the newly arrived apprentices would be accepted, just like their predecessor. The blacksmith started shouting loudly, "Ide!" At the blacksmith's shouts, a red-haired boy came running in. The blacksmith introduced him as his first apprentice. The blacksmith asked Ide to demonstrate the newcomer's skills. Ida, taking the axe in his hand, looked at the log. The boy began to swing the axe. With a precise movement, he chopped the log into 2 pieces. After demonstrating the technique, the guy began to explain. Chopping wood is not only about strength, but also about technique. In this business, everything must be even. Everyone around him was delighted. The blacksmith was proud of his apprentice. He began to tell the boys that chopping wood is not easy at all. It takes a lot of practice to get to that level. The blacksmith said that once this requirement was met, they could become his apprentices. 3 of the candidates became nervous. They were sure that it was too difficult. Xiaoen was not intimidated by this. He volunteered to give it a try. The blacksmith was fine with it. He asked each of the guys to give it a try. The first one to come out was the guy the blacksmith didn't really like. Holding the axe in his hands, he prepared to begin. Swinging and hitting the log, the guy couldn't split it, not even halfway through. The blacksmith said that wasn't even close to what was needed. A guy who the blacksmith liked came out to try. Swinging with all his might, he threw a punch that didn't even hit the log. The blacksmith called for the next guy. A third guy who was in good physical shape came out to try. After coming out to try, the guy started posing with his muscles. The people around him didn't quite understand why he was doing this. Striking the log, the guy managed to split it almost evenly. The blacksmith was a little disappointed. He had hoped the guy would have gotten it perfect. Sighing, the blacksmith said that apparently there would be no new apprentices this year. Then he called his sister. The blacksmith asked her to take the boys to the market, and if they liked something, to buy it. Auntie, holding Xiaoen by the shoulders, agreed. Xiaoen shouted at the top of his voice. He asked to try it too, chopping wood. The blacksmith walked up to the boy. Patting him on the head, he said that the guy was too young. He wouldn't even be able to lift the axe. The boy replied that he could. The blacksmith agreed to give the boy a chance. He gave him a small axe and asked him not to hurt himself. The boy, holding the axe in his hands, thanked the blacksmith for the chance. Walking up to the log, the lad began to prepare to strike. The guy looked at the log with determination. He remembered how he had trained in space and in houses. Alice had told him that he had learned the initial firewood cutting. Guy hoped it would help him. Guy began the swing for the strike. With a sturdy strike, he chopped the log into 2 perfect pieces. The boy was a little embarrassed. He asked the blacksmith how good the punch was. The blacksmith was shocked. The guy had chopped a tree that is used in shield making. Not everyone can chop it with such ease. The guy casually asked if the blacksmith was all right. The blacksmith recovered from his shock and asked Xiaoen how old is he. The guy replied that he was 9 years old. The blacksmith was pleasantly surprised. He praised the boy for being so talented at the age of 9. The boy was embarrassed by the praise. He said it was just luck. He was never that good at home. The blacksmith asked his sister to tell Beng that his son was a born blacksmith. He would be sure to teach him everything he knew. Auntie was delighted at her brother's words. She happily agreed to pass on to Bengu her brother's word. 3 months passed after Xiaoen was accepted as a blacksmith's apprentice. While making the sword, the boy was beating the heavy hammer on the anvil. After he finished his work, he showed off the sword to his first apprentice. He was delighted. After praising the guy, he told him that it took him 12 years to learn sword forging. Xiaoen, it took him 3 months. Xiaoen responded by saying that his brother's experience and intelligence were superior to his. In addition, the first disciple's coordination and strength were more coordinated. The first disciple did not stop praising Xiaoen. In addition to good forging skills, the guy also had sweet talk. The guy's conversation was interrupted by the blacksmith. Entering the forge, he called Xiaoen to come with him. The blacksmith glared menacingly at the guy. He said that he had something. The blacksmith brought a box with him, which he placed on the table. The blacksmith opened the box, and in it was a sword. The blacksmith asked Xiaoen to look at the sword and tell him what he thought. The guy took the sword in his hands. He said that the sword was the most ordinary sword, except that the blade of the blade was a bit longer than a normal sword. The guy continued to examine the sword. He noticed that there was nothing on the hilt of the sword. The boy asked if he could put something in it. The blacksmith praised him, saying that he was smart beyond his years. The blacksmith told the boy that the sword was magical. The blacksmith's teacher had given him the sword before he died. The boy couldn't believe what he heard. Refuses in this world. There is magic. The blacksmith knew the lad would be surprised by this. He had seen many knights and warriors, but he had met a wizard only once. The blacksmith's teacher's teacher was a very famous blacksmith, and he had a good friend who was a wizard. Together, they created many magical tools that made them famous throughout the kingdom. In the box, there was also a box with 3 unknown balls. The blacksmith said that these 3 balls were called magic cores. They were extracted from the bodies of monsters. The blacksmith began to insert the core into the hilt of the sword. This would have to unleash the power of the sword. The blacksmith put the sword in the hands of the lad. The guy decided to test the sword by swinging it through the air a couple of times. While waving the sword, nothing happened. The guy asked the blacksmith what was he doing wrong. The blacksmith replied that the sword was broken a long time ago. The blacksmith said that after his death, his predecessor and the wizard left a grimoire that described the way to create magical tools. Unfortunately, no one had ever been able to understand it. The blacksmith's teacher instructed him to give it to his most promising student. The grimoire was also in a box. The blacksmith said he trusted the boy. He wants to give the treasure box to him. He hopes the boy will be able to unlock the secrets. The guy goes into Alice's space with the box. After laying out the entire contents of the box in front of him, the guy began to ponder. The guy examined the grimoire. No matter how many times he looked at it, it appeared to him to be an ordinary piece of iron. After looking at it a bit more closely, the guy saw that there was some writing on the grimoire. The boy kept looking at the grimoire. There were more and more inscriptions on the grimoire. Teacher Vinyl was right, thought the guy. Alice flew over to the guy. She asked him why he was using so much spiritual power. The guy asked Alice, what is spiritual power? Alice told the guy that with spiritual power, he can exceed the limits of the body. Spiritual power can be activated after reaching the 2nd level of stretching. The guy awakened the spiritual power early, which is good, but he might get a short-term headache. The guy asked Alice if she could decipher the texts written on the grimoire. Alice told the guy that the grimoire is one of the 4 plates on which the ways of changing energy are written. The guy inquired as to why it was needed. Alice replied that she didn't know. The guy asked Alice if she had accidentally copied Vanel's data, since she was acting just like him. Luckily for the guy, Alice could translate the inscription. The first sheet said that the training should start from the 5th. The guy asked if Alice was sure to start with the last one. He didn't understand anything it said. Alice asked to touch the sheet. It seemed to the boy that it was better not to. When he touched the leaf, it started to release a huge amount of energy. The guy found himself in the middle of nothingness. 4 magic circles shone in front of him. The frightened guy called out to Alice for help. A huge silhouette of a wizard appeared in front of him. The wizard asked the boy if he was the chosen one. The boy did not understand what kind of chosen one the wizard was talking about. He began to ask the wizard who he was and where they were now. Laughing, the wizard asked the guy not to worry. The wizard replied that he was the creator of that grimoire. The place they are in is the subspace he created. The boy rejoiced. He realized that in front of him now was the wizard that teacher Vanel had told him about. The wizard was also happy to know that the boy was his friend's successor. Stroking his beard, the wizard thought about the old times when he lived 200-300 years ago. The wizard told the boy that now only a fragment of his soul, left in the grimoire, was talking to him. If only a fragment of his soul is talking to the guy, then the wizard's body must have returned to its origin. The boy was upset. He thought wizards lived a very long time. The wizard told the guy that the stronger the wizard, the longer his life. He lived 200 years, even though he was only a mid-level wizard. The boy was happy, thinking that there were a lot of wizards in the world, but it turned out not to be so. Among thousands of people, only one will have the ability of magic. In addition, most people who have the ability remain at the elementary level. A real wizard is no more common than a phoenix feather or a unicorn horn. The boy was upset by what he heard, but the wizard asked him not to be discouraged. Since he managed to enter this space and meet him, he already has the wizard's abilities. The boy got a little excited. He told him that he wanted to become a wizard so that he could live longer. This was the first time the wizard had ever heard such a thing in his life. The boy didn't think about the other things that would be revealed to him. The wizard started to open the guy's eyes. The guy began to glow with a green aura. He saw a huge palace in front of him. Standing in the palace, the guy beheld the king bowing to the wizard. Even being at the entry level, it was possible to gain the respect of the king. In addition to being rare, wizards were also incredibly powerful. They were worshipped by entire armies. Wizards were often involved in wars. If one side in a war had a wizard on its side, the outcome of the battle was a foregone conclusion. Warriors didn't know how to fight against them. The boy listening to the story, realized the importance of wizards. The wizard also told about the privileges that are given to wizards when they stand up in defense of the kingdom. The wizard took the lad into the library. He showed the resources and a place where he could dive headfirst into the study of magic if he stood up for the kingdom. As he left the library, the lad began to gaze into the distance. In the distance, he saw a wizard's tower. The boy asked the wizard, "Is this something worth striving for?" What the boy saw and heard inspired him. He decided to learn magic. To do so, he asked the wizard to be his teacher, but the wizard began to fade away. The time of his soul fragment was coming to an end. Disappearing, the wizard managed to tell the guy that this grimoire is only a vision, but for him, the information gained should be enough. The boy shouted at the wizard not to leave. After the wizard disappeared, the boy heard Alice's voice. She was waking him up. The boy woke up. He was lying in Alice's arms. Alice asked him how he was feeling. The guy replied that he was fine. He shoved Alice away from him, telling her not to hold him so tightly. The guy told Alice what happened to him when he touched the leaf. After hearing this, Alice realized why the guy had fainted. The guy, standing confidently in front of Alice, stated that he had made up his mind. Alice looked at him with confusion. The guy said he wanted to study magic. He would live the longest and become a great wizard. Alice asked if the guy had even learned the ways to study magic. The boy stiffened. Sighing, Alice laid out the grimoire. While the guy was out, she had time to analyze each of the 5 sheets of the grimoire. The guy looked at the sheets of the grimoire and said that when he entered that space, he wanted to know how she was able to reproduce the grimoire in space. Alice said it was simple. She reproduced what he saw through his memory. If he wanted to remember something, it could easily be done in space. The boy blushed. He asked, "Could Alice really see everything he sees?" Alice replied that she can see completely everything, even when the guy is in the shower. Alice, while analyzing, also downloaded ways to learn magic. Hearing this, the guy's eyes lit up with joy. After being in space for a long time, the guy's body was lying on the bed in the real world. He continued to listen to Alice. Alice asked him to develop spiritual power before he started learning magic. The 5th page of the grimoire explained how to do this. Walking through the space, Alice explained that when the guy's spiritual power reached the right level, he could start learning magic using the 4th sheet. The guy inquired about how he could develop spiritual power. Alice opened a large system window that emitted a bright white light. She asked the guy to gaze into it. Staring into the white light, the boy saw something. It turned out to be a huge slab, with no less huge drawing on it. The guy could not understand what was in front of him now. Is it somehow connected with spiritual power? Alice, coming to the back of the guy, took him by the shoulder and explained, "He just needs to act on the patterns in the drawing." Alice's breasts at this point rubbed against the guy's back, causing him to start blushing. Alice said that the guy needed to memorize that the patterns follow a certain order. Alice kept rubbing her breasts against the guy's back, which made his nose bleed. He couldn't take it anymore. Alice noticed that the guy was bleeding. She didn't understand how it happened, and why did the guy start fainting again? After a while, after leaving the space, the guy returned to the forge. His hammer was once again hitting the anvil. The blacksmith, along with the first apprentice, stood and watched Xiaowen's forging. The blacksmith didn't even notice how the boy had achieved such results. He couldn't even say he was 9 years old. Ide agreed with the teacher's words. Xiaowen, covered in sweat, stood at the anvil. It had been a long time since he started stretching, and his body was noticeably stronger now. The guy remembered the pattern training that Alice had shown him. Several days of spiritual strength training had not borne fruit. He began to think, maybe this way is not suitable for him. The blacksmith approached the boy. Taking him by the shoulder, he asked him to go rest. Ide would finish his work. Xiaowen thanked the teacher. The guy went to his room. His teacher, so some things he would never know. The guy put on his glasses and jumped on his bed. Learning the system, he only needs 3 hours of sleep to fully recover. After logging in, the guy walked over to the slab with the drawing. Alice noticed that the guy came in early today. The guy looked at the slab with the drawing and replied that from now on he would always come early. That way, he would have more time to practice. Alice asked the guy if he was okay. Last time he didn't even make it to 60% last time. The guy kept staring hard at the drawing. He said that his training wasn't paying off, and because of that, he wanted to train more. Blushing, Xiaowen turned around and shouted to Alice to stay away from him this time. Alice lowered her gaze down and replied that she understood him. The guy pointed his hand at the drawing. Sticking out 3 fingers, he started to drive on the pattern. After a while, the guy cried out in pain. Xiaowen was completely exhausted. Alice praised him for his diligence. The drawing on the stove began to glow blue. Alice was ecstatic that the guy had succeeded. Alice hugged the guy tightly, saying she didn't expect anything else from him. The guy's nose was bleeding again. Alice and the guy watched the slab with the pattern transform into something. Once the transformation was complete, the guy saw the 2nd level. Alice was happy about it. The guy, on the other hand, was falling off his feet from exhaustion. He was afraid to imagine what would happen next. After a while, a naked Xiaowen was bleeding with sweat. Alice, with his bare shoulder, asked the guy if he was sure he wanted to continue, because his body might not be able to take it. Breathing out, the guy said that he would continue. With a scowl on his face, he was already starting to finish. Finally, the guy finished his workout. Alice, sitting on her knees and clapping her hands, congratulated the guy. Wiping sweat from this guy's forehead, Alice praised him for his efforts. He's only been practicing for 3 days, and he's already finished the circuit. The guy asked not to speak so ambiguously to Alice as before. Guy leaned his hand on his head. Due to the training of spiritual power, he began to feel that it had increased noticeably. Alice asked to wait for the guy. She would check his condition. Finishing the check, Alice shouted. Leaning over to the boy, she asked him if he was exactly 9 years old. The boy said yes. Alice told the boy that the system showed that his training during this time had already helped him develop his spiritual power to a higher level than that of an adult. The boy was pleased. He asked Alice to be more specific about the results. Looking at the grimoire sheets, Alice told him that the guy's spiritual power already met the requirements for this training method, but there was one nuance. Alice inquired if the guy really wanted to know about the nuance of the training. Xiaowen replied in agreement. Alice looked at the database. It only contained the guy's parameters, but judging from the grimoire data, there was something else. Xiaowen was slower than any other wizard to develop spiritual power. When the guy heard this, he split in two. Alice asked the guy not to lose heart. Grabbing him by the shoulders, she started to shake him, trying to bring him to his senses. The guy suddenly grabbed Alice's hands. She asked him what was wrong. Guy recalled that Alice could change the time ratio as her body strengthened. Alice hesitantly confirmed his words. Xiaowen started to suggest ratio options such as 10-1 and even 50-1. Alice declined. First, the first part of the initial stretching level must be completed. There's no way to do it without that. The guy suggested 100-1. Alice once again replied that she needed to fully complete the intermediate level. Guy realized that there was hope. He still has Alice and the passive learning method. With these factors, time was not a problem. 2 months had passed. Zhao En, all this time, diligently training his body. The guy started to enter space. He had finished the 4th lesson of the first part. After fully entering the space, he was greeted by the explosions of holiday clappers. Alice crept up behind him and grabbed the guy by the shoulders. She congratulated the guy. Now he could adjust the ratio, 8-1. Alice brought her lips close to Xiaowen's ears. The guy blushed at her action. Alice whispered in his ear that he had been practicing outside all the time lately. He had completely forgotten about her. The guy grabbed his heart and pulled Alyssa away from you. He asked her to calm down and start 5th period. He wants to adjust the 10-1 ratio as soon as possible. Alice wasn't happy. The guy had completely neglected spiritual power training. Alice projected the guy's broken sword. She said she analyzed it again and realized something. She realized that the guy using spiritual power could reforge the broken sword. The guy hesitantly asked if what he had heard was correct. Alice replied that it was correct. However, reforging this sword requires at least 200 units of spiritual power, otherwise it can't be repaired. Running her finger over the guy's face, Alice estimated that he only had 100 and something units of spiritual power. The guy's face frowned. Alice told the guy that if he practiced 50 hours a day, he would be able to forge a sword in a couple months. Hearing this, the guy tried to run away, but Alice grabbed him by the collar and wouldn't let him go. The boy, looking confidently at Alice, agreed to the training. The guy was training alone in space. Alice flew up to him and congratulated him for increasing his training speed. Alice's body began to shimmer. The guy wondered if she was okay. Alice continued to shimmer more and more. The guy became very nervous. He didn't understand what was happening to Alice. Alice's shimmering body fell right on top of the guy, knocking him off his feet. With a fixed gaze, Alice looked at the guy. After a long exchange of looks, Alice asked the guy to change her battery. The guy wondered without understanding. Isn't it from the future? Does it need to be recharged? How can he do that? Almost discharged, Alice asked the guy to take the battery out of her and leave it in the sun. It will start charging immediately, but she won't be able to be near him during that. The concerned guy asked how long it would take. Alice replied that if all was well, about half a month. The guy, looking sadly at Alice, said that he would miss her. Smiling, Alice asked one more thing. She asked the guy if everything was ready to repair the magic sword. The guy proudly replied that he had everything ready and was waiting for orders. Alice, with her right hand, projected some kind of diagram. The guy looked at the diagram carefully. Is this really a scheme for creating a magic sword? Yes, this is the scheme for creating a magic sword, and the guy needs to memorize it urgently, the fading Alice replied. Alice pointed to the line that shows the order of creation. The guy asked if he can memorize it. Will he be able to reforge the sword? Alice replied that it is only possible in theory, but in practice she doesn't know. The boy gazed at the diagram. He noticed that it was quite simple, but for some reason it gave him a headache to look at it. Smiling, Alice said that the boy would do well. If training spiritual power is riding a bicycle, then the sword scheme is driving a car. Right now, the guy needs to get used to it. The guy thanked Alice, saying he wouldn't let her down. Saying goodbye, Alice said she would look forward to not seeing them again. Wishing him success, Alice disappeared. The boy practiced hard at home. The training was very difficult. His eyes grew dark at the mere sight of that diagram. When he finished training, he remembered Alice. He promised himself he wouldn't give up for her. The boy was sitting at the table, eating bread. On the windowsill, charging from the sun, he had a battery. It had been a whole month since he had not seen Alice. The blacksmith, who sat beside him, was proud of the lad. He was very pleased with the boy's rapid development, so he decided to praise him. The blacksmith's praise surprised the boy, as they were forbidden to talk while eating. Xiaowen thanked the teacher for the praise, saying that it was all thanks to him. The blacksmith glowed with happiness. He decided that he should thank the boy's talent. He was born for blacksmithing. The first apprentice agreed with the blacksmith's words. He added that Xiaowen would definitely become a famous blacksmith. The boy was embarrassed by the praise. The boy looked away. He didn't understand why they all wanted him to become a blacksmith. He wants to be a magician. The blacksmith asked Xiaowen to prepare himself. The boy looked at the teacher in surprise, not understanding what he was talking about. The blacksmith began to explain that Knight Stockton would return in 2 months. Therefore, the lad should show his strength. The blacksmith said that he wanted to ask the knight to take Xiaowen and Ai to Saihei City to take part in the novice blacksmith exam. A picture of everyone admiring him immediately popped up in front of the guy. The guy couldn't believe what he heard. He tried to say something to the blacksmith, but he stopped him. The blacksmith took the boy outside. He asked him to think about what he wanted to forge by then. The blacksmith told the boy not to worry. He was sure they'd get through. They just needed to show everything they were capable of. Xiaowen agreed with his teacher's words. Going home, the guy took the solar panel from the windowsill. He put it back into the glasses. Putting on the glasses, he thought of Alice. Stepping into space, he called out to Alice. Going to the white light, he kept calling for Alice. The boy became very nervous, for Alice never appeared. He didn't understand what the reason was, for the battery had been charging for a month. Where was Alice? Suddenly he heard a voice. When he looked up, he saw Alice flying on her broom. Alice greeted the boy. Alice walked down to the guy. Xiaowen told her that he was very scared when he didn't see her. He thought something had happened to the teaching machine. Alice replied that she just decided to tease him. Alice asked the guy if the rumors that he might leave for the big city were true. Xiaowen looked at her in surprise. He couldn't understand how she was watching him. Wasn't she charging? Alice replied that she had just read his memories. The guy replied that Alice was a stalker, and that children need personal space too. He then went to go practice. Alice asked him to wait and to think of a good opportunity. The guy turned to Alice and asked, what was she talking about? Chuckling wryly, Alice replied that once the guy left, he would find a better place. The guy perked up. He began to ask Alice why he would leave for another city at the age of 9. Did she really think he should go? Alice smilingly replied that from her observations, he was capable of it. Besides, staying here, he might not find new ways to learn magic. Alice advised the guy to move after all. Xiaowen thought about her word. After thinking about it for a while, he agreed to Alice's suggestion. Alice said if he wanted to study magic, he needed to interact with wizards. That meant he needed to show the knight something special in order for him to take him along. The boy didn't understand what Alice meant by special. Alice, smiling, offered an option. She offered to restore the magic sword. The guy's face turned pale because just from one look at the scheme, he has a splitting headache. Alice continued to persuade the boy. A 9-year-old blacksmith is already something incredible. But if this 9-year-old blacksmith also restores the magic sword, he will definitely catch the knight's attention. Alice said that if the guy wants to waste his life, he can stay living here. But if he wants to see the world, he should do his best to do so. Give his best. He's not a nobleman. He doesn't have a great master wizard. He can only rely on himself. His future depends only on himself. It's been some time since the boy last communicated with Alice. Now he had reached the right level of spiritual power for this blueprint. The guy was back in space again. He finished assembling the blueprint. Alice was sitting on her broom watching the system windows. The boy asked if he had succeeded. Alice flew over to him and said that this time he had succeeded in assembling the blueprint. With a sly look at the guy, Alice suggested that he try some kind of spell. The boy couldn't believe it. This blueprint turned out to be a spell as well. That's right, Alice replied. When he's outside, he just needs to visualize this circuit. Stroking the guy, Alice asked him just to try it. The guy agreed, but he was curious to know why Alice was so eager to see it. Alice, looking at the system windows, told him that she wanted to gather as much information as possible. This world is very different from the guy's world. She needs to create a new database. Therefore, she needs a lot of information. The guy agreed to Alice's proposal. He asked her what was the name of the spell he needed to do. Alice winked at him and replied, "The Sharp Edge spell." Back in the real world, the boy started thinking about the magic scheme. He visualized a magic sword in his head. He could feel the spiritual power being absorbed. The feeling reminded him of a drum that won't stop being banged. Suddenly, the guy saw a white light. The guy began to be enveloped by blue energy, which he gathered in his hand. He could not control this action. As he continued to collect the energy, a ball formed in his hands. He felt that his spiritual power was about to be depleted. Unable to hold the energy in his hands, he spurted it upward. When he lifted his head up, he saw a hole in the ceiling. It had all happened very quickly. The guy couldn't believe such destructive power of the spell. He began to ponder. His spiritual power was almost at zero. Even though the spell is powerful, it won't help in battle as it wastes a large amount of spiritual power. Looks like he needs to train even more. Finished pondering, the guy entered the space. Alice rushed towards the guy. She started asking him about the Sharp Edge spell. Did he like it? The guy replied that the spell was very powerful, but it was too dangerous. It didn't suit him. Alice made an analysis, after which she realized that the spell could be improved. She asked the guy to give her some time and she would show him something incredible. The guy couldn't believe it. Could Alice really make this spell even stronger? Alice began to tell him that this spell allows you to compress air into a ball and then shoot it out. Looking at the system window that had information about the spell, Alice realized that the speed and power of the balloon was no stronger than shooting a bullet. If the compressed air took the shape of a bullet, it would be an air bullet, Xiaowen shouted out. Alice agreed with the guy. By taking the shape of a bullet, the effectiveness of the spell would be much higher. Alice started to change the spell. The guy was starting to be intimidated by this learning machine. After a while, the guy activated the spell again. He punched a hole in the training board. After using the spell, the guy burned his hand. Knight Stockton stayed for a month because he had other things to do. During this time, the guy's spiritual power became much stronger. The guy learned how to compress air into a bullet. Thanks to this modification, the Sharp Edge spell became even stronger. Also, less spiritual power was spent. The guy was practicing in the field when suddenly, he was called by his first apprentice. ID said that Lord Stockton had returned. The boys went to meet the Lord. A lot of people were gathered to meet the Lord. The boy thought it was everyone's duty to meet the Lord. ID explained to him that all the people are here of their own free will. Because of the Lord, they are all living well. Everyone is grateful to him from the bottom of their hearts. The lad recalled his father telling him too that Knight Stockton was a good lord. A large number of people live on these lands. The land here is fertile. If the Lord is not harsh, no one will die of hunger. Xiaowen and Ida met the teacher. The teacher asked them to approach him. For a while, the boys looked out for the Lord. Standing on a rock and gazing into the distance, Xiaowen could see the Lord accompanied by warriors. The warriors on horseback rode into the city. The first disciple's eyes glittered. He wanted to become a knight for a moment. Xiaowen asked him, did he really want to give up blacksmithing so easily? Ida replied that he would become a great blacksmith, but being a knight was also very cool. Knight Stockton jumped down from his horse. The blacksmith and knight's gazes crossed. Unexpectedly, they jumped at each other. But as it turned out, it was their warm greeting to each other. After the long-awaited meeting, they hugged each other tightly. Shaking hands, the knight asked the blacksmith if he had come out to meet him. The blacksmith replied that yes, and praised the knight's wonderful face. The knight took out a sack filled with something. He said that this time, he had brought something for the blacksmith. The blacksmith asked to see what was in the sack. The contents of the sack turned out to be weapons and armor. Having finished examining the gift, the blacksmith asked the knight what was wrong. The knight replied that on the way back he met a little trouble. It was nothing serious. The blacksmith handed the bag of gifts to the first apprentice. He asked the knight how long he planned to stay in the city. The knight replied that he would be here for at least half a month. The blacksmith told the knight about his apprentices and how good they were. He asked the knight if he would take them with him next time. The knight saw the first apprentice behind the blacksmith's back. He asked him if he was good enough. The blacksmith replied that he could already take part in the entry-level artisan exam. The knight agreed. Placing his hand on the first apprentice's shoulder, he promised that when they returned, he would give him any shop. Ida questioned the knight. Would he really gift him an entire store? After scratching the back of his head, he refused the offer. ID said he wanted to stay with the teacher. The knight praised the student for being loyal to his teacher. Turning his head, the knight saw the boy. The blacksmith introduced Xiaowen to the knight, calling the boy very talented. The knight was surprised at what he heard. The knight crouched down on one knee and slipped some candy into the boy's hand. He thanked him for coming and asked him to share the candy with his friend. The knight rose to his feet and once again asked the blacksmith to show the second apprentice. The blacksmith pointed at Xiaowen with his hand. The knight couldn't believe it. The knight asked his friend not to joke with him. After all, the kid was still a kid. The knight's words didn't just hurt the kid. The blacksmith recognized that the kid was still a kid, but his abilities were already as good as the first apprentice. The knight decided to test the kid. He offered him a test in the forge. He added that he doubted very much that the boy would be able to lift the blacksmith's big hammer. From seeing the boy's abilities, the knight was shocked. He could not believe that a small child could lift such a large hammer so easily. The blacksmith only smiled back. The knight pounced on the kid. Looking over his body, he suggested the kid to follow him and learn from him to become a knight. Xiaowen asked him why he wanted him to become a knight. After all, just a short while ago, he had treated him like a child. The knight grabbed the guy's shoulders and replied that the reason was because of his strength. Strength is the foundation of a knight's fundamental. At such a young age, he is already so strong. He can definitely become a strong knight. The guy realized that his strength actually depended on his morning stretching. If he kept practicing, he could even become stronger than the Stockton knight. The knight asked the guy to believe him. In this world, there is nothing better than becoming a knight. After he becomes a knight, his status will rise to noble. He asked the lad to look at him. At his estate, wouldn't he want to have one? The blacksmith came into the conversation, interrupting the knight. He stated that Xiao En is his apprentice. He's already a pretty good artisan. Why is Stockton trying to make a knight out of him? The knight asked the blacksmith to calm down. He asked not to compare the noble profession of a knight to the business of a blacksmith. He asked if the blacksmith knows how many people dream of becoming a real knight. The blacksmith, blocking the boy behind him, replied that he didn't know, but he knows that every year many knights lose their precious lives for various reasons. The knight objected. He explained to the blacksmith that unless they experienced pain and suffering, they could not become true knights. He was sure that with Xiaowen's talent, he would definitely be able to pass the test. The knight and blacksmith continued to argue amongst themselves. The guy watching this pondered over the knight's suggestion. Even if he had a chance to become a noble and obtain land, he would have to fight, and that wasn't exactly what the lad desired. The guy remembered his past life, in which he just wanted to live peacefully. It's a long way from war, but everyone knows what war is. The boy decided that if God gave him a second chance, he should live on, live as long as possible. The boy stopped the argument between the knight and the blacksmith. He bowed to the knight and thanked him for offering to be his apprentice, but he was already the blacksmith's apprentice, so he had to refuse. The knight was upset, but he still told the boy that if he ever changed his mind, he could always come to him. The blacksmith didn't expect such a response from his disciple. He thought that Xiaowen craved for fame and glory like all his peers, but it turned out that he just wanted to become an artisan. The blacksmith laughed. He asked the children to show the knight what they could do. The children accepted the teacher's orders. The first to demonstrate his talent, Ide volunteered. He decided to show rough handling of a heavy ball. The knight motioned for the demonstration to begin. Walking over to the anvil, Ide scrutinized the sword. He proceeded to work the sword, burning it in a fire and forging it on the anvil. After cooling the sword in a bucket of water, Ide began polishing it against a stone. Finishing the work, the lad demonstrated the sword. The knight liked the quality and speed of the work. He took the sword in his hands and began to examine it. He praised the sword, pointing out its weight, balance, and even its sharpness. The sword passed the test and could be used in battle. The knight stated that the blacksmith had a good successor. The blacksmith replied that Ide may not have talent, but he is a hard worker, which is the most important thing in blacksmithing. The knight suggested that the blacksmith give the second apprentice to him, since he now had a successor. The blacksmith asked him not to even dream about it. Looking around, the blacksmith noticed that Xiao En had disappeared somewhere. Xiaowen stood in the corner of the room with his hands behind his back. He said that he didn't want to create anything today. The blacksmith and the knight were surprised. What is he going to do then? The knight had already started yelling at the guy. He said that if he didn't show anything, he might not even think about the city. The blacksmith and the knight saw something incredible. The guy pulled out a broken sword and said that today he would work on it. The guy stated that today he would restore the magic sword. The knight began to examine the sword. He noticed that it looked very unusual. Nervously, the blacksmith confirmed the apprentice's word. The knight couldn't believe that there was a magical weapon in front of him. He asked the guy where he got it from. The boy replied that it was given to him by his teacher. The knight was shocked. He asked his friend, "Can he really forge magic weapons?" The blacksmith replied that the sword was also given to him by his teacher. But unfortunately, this magic weapon is damaged, and the blacksmith cannot repair it. The knight was delighted. He asked the boy, "Can he really repair a broken weapon?" The lad replied that he just wanted to test his strength. The blacksmith looked proudly at his apprentice. He knew the boy was confident in his ability. The lad set about repairing the weapon. Glowing the sword in the fire, he noticed that the flame was not enough, too little heat. The blacksmith saw that his apprentice had a problem and decided to help him. He approached the blower and told him that he would make the fire himself. The student and the teacher agreed to both do a good job. The boy thought about practicing in space. He had been practicing a lot. Everything would definitely be fine. Never mind the fact that this was his first time recovering a magic weapon in reality. The temperature rose. While in the fire, the color of the sword began to change. The blacksmith noticed that the guy pulled something unknown from his pocket. The blacksmith asked the guy what it was in his hand. Xiaowen explained to the teacher that it was the remains of a magic book that he had cut off a piece of. The blacksmith couldn't believe his ears. The magic book was very valuable. How could Xiaowen do such a thing? The guy had no choice. Without a magic item, one cannot use mental spirit power on a magic weapon. The guy sitting on one knee began to gather mental spirit power around. He began to infuse the mental spirit power into the magic sword. Absorbing the mental spirit power, patterns began to appear on the weapon. The guy swung the hammer and decided that his future would change from now on. Imagining himself riding a horse, galloping through the vastness of this world, he decided that he would not stay here forever. Then he imagined himself as a wizard sitting in a magical tower reading a book. He wants to go further and learn magic. Imagining himself holding the whole world in his hands, the guy decided he will become the strongest magician. The guy continued to forge a magic sword with his hammer. Picking up the sword with tongs, the guy began to examine it. He was looking for the part blocking the flow of magic. After a short examination, he managed to find it. The guy used his mind, following the flow of the magic sword. Finishing forging the sword, he flavored it with the power of the magic spirit. Guy finished restoring the sword. The knight and the blacksmith walked over to see the sword. With awe in his eyes, the knight asked the lad if he had succeeded. Standing the three of them near the sword, they continued to stare at it. Pointing his hand at the sword, the lad poured mental power into it. The blacksmith and the knight watched intently at what was happening. The sword began to glow brightly, blinding the blacksmith and knight. The boy didn't take his gaze off the sword for a second. He confidently took the sword in his hand. After inspecting the sword, he proudly declared that he had restored it. The knight took the sword in his hand. With delight in his eyes, he gazed into the brilliance of the sword blade. He felt very bitter that he could only use the sword, and magic was beyond his ability. Passing the sword to the blacksmith, the knight asked him what he thought of it. The blacksmith asked him not to mock him. Carefully examining the sword, the blacksmith said that by the standard of an artisan, his apprentice was already very talented and was even able to repair a magic sword. With tears in his eyes, he praised the boy's technique for making the blacksmith remember his teacher, who had already passed away. The blacksmith asked the boy if the sword could release magic. The guy stuck out his hand and showed the magic core. With this core, it should work. Inserting the magic core into the hilt of the sword, he glowed. The blacksmith started swinging the sword. The guy explained to him that the owner of this magic sword can freely wield it. When the energy of the magic core is enough, he can use the magic point. The recovery time is about 30 seconds. The blacksmith decided to test it. He activated the ability, and a magic shot occurred from the sword tip. The magic shot was so strong that it broke a hole in the front wall of the forge. The blacksmith and the knight looked at the hole and saw that the shot had also hit the wood outside. The bodies of the two craftsmen were petrified. The boy smilingly asked the knight if he passed the test. The knight's eyes twitched at what he saw. Stockton grabbed the guy by the shoulders. Praising the lad, he said that of course he had passed the test. The blacksmith asked his apprentice worriedly, "Since he put the magic core into the sword, does that mean he has already mastered magic?" The boy awkwardly looked at his teacher and replied that he had indeed mastered it. The knight was once again amazed by the lad. He explained to the guy that since he had mastered magic, according to the rules of the country, he could join the magic tower of the country for training. The knight asked the lad if he would agree to such terms. The boy stammered and asked about the magic tower. He pretended not to know anything. The knight began to tell him that although there weren't many mages in their country, there was an honorable 5-star mage and 5 other mages. Each of them has their own magic tower. Since the guy is a citizen of the country, he has a chance to become a mage and get his own magic tower for learning magic. The guy was excited. The blacksmith put his hand on the guy's shoulder and praised him. He didn't expect that the guy was not only a genius in the craft, but also had a talent for magic. The boy looked sadly at the teacher. The blacksmith knelt down and put the sword in the lad's hand. He said he knew of the boy's efforts. He was very proud of him and would respect any choice he made. The knight asked the boy to think carefully before he chose. The knight was about to leave. Looking at the magic sword, he asked the lad to think about the profession. Which one is more respected and has more future? The boy agreed with him. He said he would think it over carefully. As he looked at the knight leaving, the boy noticed how he did not take his eyes off the magic sword. He suggested that the knight try it out. The knight instantly stopped, saying he wouldn't mind trying it out. The knight raised the sword above his head. The smile never left his face. With clear movements, he began to swing the sword in all directions, mouthing battle cries to himself. The knight was very enthusiastic. Xiaowen and the blacksmith watched him carefully. The boy didn't realize that the knight had such a side to his character. After he finished testing the sword, the blushing knight asked him not to look at him like that. He called the lad to come with him in 3 days to Louise's castle. The lad replied in agreement. Xiaowen started thinking about how everything was happening too fast. He wasn't prepared for such a quick development. The knight asked the guy to go pack his things. In 3 days, they would be leaving for Louis Castle. The lad asked to go back home to tell his father about it. The knight replied that there would be no problem with that. They would go to the lad's village together and see his father. The boy thanked the knight. Arriving at the village, they were met by a crowd of people, among whom stood the lad's father and Joey's aunt. Sitting on horseback with the knight, the lad greeted his father. Knight Stockton invited the lad's father and Joey's aunt to his mansion. This shocked the whole village. The lad and his father became the main topic of conversation for the villager. The guy came to visit Alice. She hugged him with all her might. It was she who suggested to show Mr. Stockton his talent for magic. When the plan succeeded, she was very happy. After returning from the village back to the manor, Xiaowen said goodbye to his teacher. Everyone from the forge couldn't bear to see him leave. This was the first time the boy had seen Teacher Vanel crying. The teacher gave him the hammer given to him by the master as a memento, but he probably won't use it in the future. As someone who had moved to this world, the boy was a stranger here, but after being with everyone for so long, he couldn't bear to leave them. As he left the manor, the boy saw the sun set. He promised himself that he would definitely become a mage for the sake of all his loved ones. After 3 days of traveling, they got caught in the rain. Walking in the rain in the middle of a field, the knight ordered his warriors to set up camp for the night. After setting up camp, everyone hid in the chamber. Taking the lad into the chamber, the knight asked him how he was feeling, traveling out of town for the first time. The lad replied that he was very tired. The knight gave the boy a chair to sit in. He said they had 5 more days to go, and asked him to wait a little longer. Gradually, he should adapt and get used to it. The guy asked not to worry about him. While resting in the chamber, the guy asked the knight why he didn't take off his armor. Isn't he tired? The knight replied that he still had patrols to do. Having worn this armor for 20 years, he was already used to it. Going on patrol, the knight asked the guy to rest. The guy asked to wait. He took out his magic sword and thanked the knight for taking care of him. As a token of his gratitude, he asked to accept his gift of the magic sword. The knight was very happy, the lad's gift, but he decided to refuse it because it is his duty to protect his citizens and also to accompany the guy. It's the law set by the country, so it's his responsibility and duty. He added that this magic sword is very valuable and only Xiao En can keep it. Xiaowen was surprised by what he heard. He had previously thought the knight was unreliable, so he just wanted to test him. He would never have thought that he was such an honest person. But he didn't dwell on the rejection. He held out his sword to the knight and asked him to accept the gift. Since he's an artisan, he can restore magical weapons as well as create them. Besides, he's going to become a mage. His weapon will be a wand. Isn't this sword more suitable for a knight like Mr. Stockton? The knight agreed to accept the sword. He thanked Xiaowen for the gift, saying that he was a very generous kid, and he would definitely treasure this sword. The kid added that after he mastered his new skills, he wanted to incorporate some magic into the knight's armor. Stockton agreed with him and left on patrol. Putting on his goggles, the boy lay down on the bed. In space, he practiced with the patterns in the drawing. The guy heard Alice calling him. The guy asked her what was wrong. This was the first time he had seen her panic like this. Alice asked the guy to wake up quickly. She felt that there was someone outside his tent. The guy came back to the real world. He felt someone entering his tent. He reached into his sack and pulled out the hammer his teacher had given him. Gathering his will into a fist, the lad faced the stranger. He decided for himself that he would not just lie silently and began to attack the unknown guest. As he struck, Guy's hammer collided with the stranger's dagger. A battle ensued between the two, during which the lad was able to see the stranger's face. Looking straight into his eyes, he realized that he had never seen this man before. The stranger threw the guy off of him with a kick of his foot. Then, using his dagger, he launched an attack. The guy didn't know what to do. He didn't have any defense ability, but he managed to remember something. The guy dodged the attack using a somersault from the morning stretching technique. The stranger wasn't prepared for the guy's dodge. The guy didn't know who the stranger was, but he had no intention of losing to him. With a swing of his hammer, the guy jumped at the stranger. As he struck the stranger, the guy's eyes began to double over. Taking a blow, the guy missed. The stranger quickly jumped back from the blow, right behind the guy's back, pointing his sharp dagger at him. At that moment, the guy felt something. The guy's face turned pale. This feeling was familiar to him. That feeling turned out to be the aura of death. The dagger blade almost reached the guy, but he wasn't going to die. The guy applied mental force and began to gather air on his fingertips. He compressed the collected air into a bullet, and then fired it right into the stranger's forehead, penetrating his skull through and through. The guy's body began to shake. Looking at his hands, he realized that he had just killed a man. The sound of battle echoed throughout the camp. The troops raised the alarm. A knight came into the boy's room. He saw the lad groaning, crawling on the floor. He asked him what happened. The guy started swinging his hammer without looking. The knight stopped the guy. Taking a knee and hugging the guy, he asked him not to worry. The guy grumbled to himself. The knight continued to calm him down. The boy began to explain that a stranger had snuck into his room. He couldn't defeat him, so in his panic, he used magic. The guy questioned the knight. Did he really hurt someone? Why does someone want to kill him? The knight apologized to the guy. He said that most likely the stranger had mixed up the targets. The knight guessed who sent the man. The knight told Xiaowen that the assassin's target was him, not the guy. Most likely the assassin didn't know that the knight would be on patrol, so after entering his chamber, he swooped down on the guy. The guy asked the knight, "Is someone trying to kill him? Who would hold a grudge against him?" The knight sighed heavily. He doesn't know if the guy should tell. The knight asked the lad if he had seen his estate and territory. How big did he think it was? The lad replied that the grounds were indeed large. His father told him that if he added a farm to this territory, it could accommodate thousands of people. The knight suggested that the boy go out for some fresh air so he wouldn't have to stay near a dead man. Walking under the night sky, Stockton asked the lad if he thought it was strange. He's a knight who doesn't even have any honors. How can he own such a large land? Stopping, they looked up at the sky. The guy hoped that the weather would be good in the morning. Sitting down on the ground, the knight began to tell the lad about his life. 50 years ago, his land was just an abandoned plot of land with no value. It was impossible to even grow agricultural products on such soil. At that time, his father was a brilliant knight. He brought the townspeople to this land. With all their might, people worked hard to make the land prosper. After his father's hard work, they finally established their estate. The boy asked the knight, since he said that with the soil quality like this, crops couldn't be grown, then how did his father achieve reclamation? The knight said he would answer the lad's question, but asked him to keep it a secret. The boy promised that he would keep his mouth shut. The knight looked at the sky and said that it was all due to magic. The boy became wary. The knight explained to him that his father was Count Cambert's subordinate. Back then, Count Camber begged the great magician Tishoni to use magic to invent a method of farming to change the quality of the soil. Count Cambert instructed his father to try out this method on this earth. After 10 years of hard work by his father and people, some achievements finally appeared. The boy was thrilled that it had started with such a small thing, for his father had told him that they could now be considered the food storehouse for the entire country of Gong. The knight smiled in return. He said that the lad's father cared a lot about the manor and knew so much. No wonder he was able to raise such a talented child. The knight explained to the lad that some people are jealous and speak ill against them. The kid at this time turned his head to the side and thought that actually his father didn't teach him. The lad asked the knight, "Are those who speak evil and envy their countrymen?" The knight replied that they are. It is to know that they can do nothing. These people are very greedy. They have set their eyes on these lands and want to appropriate all the gains to themselves. After many failures of buying these lands, they started to take actions such as hiring assassins and so on. The boy thought for a moment, these people probably don't just want glory and achievements, but they just want to absorb all the lands. The lad asked the knight, since he and his father had come here under the orders of Earl Cambert, then why didn't they ask him for help? The knight explained to the boy that in their country, low-rank nobles were obliged to make offerings and pay taxes to high-rank nobles. Because of this, the high-rank nobles would not protect the low-rank nobles. The knight sighed heavily. He said that if Count Camber was alive, he wouldn't have to worry about this problem. The boy asked if after Count Cambert's death, his successor didn't take care of it. The knight explained that Earl Cambert taught the Duke of Warrington. He was respected by the Duke, but after his death, his son Earl Fraser was too weak and can't influence Duke Warrington's decision. Guy realized that since the Knight of Stockton has lost the Earl's support, the higher-ranking nobles are attacking their own subordinates and taking away the knight's achievement. But others must not know about this, because if it becomes known that someone is trying to take over someone else's lands, the other nobles will quickly eliminate that upstart, so he can only do it secretly. The knight said that sometimes he even thinks about hiding and living a normal life, but as the lord of the manor, he has to protect not only his family, but also the families of the citizens of his territory. Guy asked Lord Stockton, why doesn't he just give the territories to these nobles then? The lord replied that even that wouldn't be enough for them. They want to know about the cultivation method. If the great mage Tishoni finds out that the lord's family gave his method to someone else, he would definitely be killed. The guy got to his feet and said that he knew the solution to the problem. With a wave of his hand, he declared that after he went to the magic tower, he could simply ask the great mage Tishoni to protect the Lord. The Lord dazedly sat on the grass as he continued to listen to the guy. Hope appeared in his eyes. He asked the lad if he would really do it. The lad replied that he would definitely fulfill his promise. He asked the Lord, would any of his enemies be able to afford to insult the great mage Tishoni? The Lord replied that it was impossible. Great mage Tishoni, one of the 6 great mages. Guy said that if the nobles don't want to help, they'll just ask Grand Mage Tishoni to be the Lord's support. That should solve all the problem. The Lord hesitated. He asked the lad, why would a great mage care about some lowly knight? A mage's position in the country is much higher than a duke. The lad confessed to the Lord that he had learned magic on his own, using a magic book given to him by his teacher, Vanel. The lad asked the Lord, the ability to comprehend magic in a short time, would it be able to attract a great mage? The Lord asked the lad, why does it do so much for him? The lad looked thoughtfully at the sky and replied that he had never thought about it before. Smiling full force, he said that the Lord seems like a very good man to him, so he just wants to help him. The Lord hugged the guy and cried. The guy looked awkwardly at the Lord, because really, he's only doing this for himself. The Lord was repenting himself for being so useless, because he needs to use the guy to get protection. The guy said that there's nothing wrong with that. Since in this world, everyone related to the guy, his family and friends, are in the Lord's estate. Guy didn't want them to become sacrificial tools of war. Xiaowen and the Lord talked for a whole night. At dawn, they continued on their way. A week had passed since the incident with the assassin. In that time, they had to reach Louis Castle. The castle appeared on the horizon. After entering the castle, it should become a little safer. Passing through the mountains, the castle could be seen more and more. Finally, they reached the castle. Entering the castle grounds, the boy asked the Lord how many people lived in the castle. The Lord recalled that 2 years ago, there were about 100,000 people living in the castle. Now there must be more. The lad was delighted to see so many people in the castle. The Lord explained to him that it was actually more like a city than a castle, but the dukes decided to name it after Louis, so they called it Louis Castle. Since then, the town has expanded tenfold, and the place has never been restored. Everything became clear to the boy, because before that, he did not understand why they were going to the castle. Sitting on the edge of the carriage, the lad looked around the castle. It was very noisy around. It was really something like a big city. Compared to the world of the boy's previous life, this little town was more suited for a peaceful life. The Lord showed the place where they would be staying. Opening the door of the building, the Lord called out to Butler. Inside was a bar. The men who drank alcohol in the place noticed the Lord. Lord, startled by the stares. The bartender standing behind the bar, wiping his glass, stared at the Lord. The bartender turned out to be Lord's old friend Butler. He came out from behind the bar to greet the Lord. As he approached the Lord, the bartender got into a fighting stance. He swung his fist at Lord. Lord dodged the attack. Then the Lord counterattacked, which Butler interrupted by grabbing his arm. Then, with a firm handshake, they greeted each other. It had been 3 years since they had last seen each other. Old friends hadn't changed at all in that time. The boy was relieved to know that the Lord and Butler were old friends, and their exchange of blows was friendly. ID greeted Butler's uncle. Xiaowen asked Ida if he knew Butler. Ida replied that Butler is Lord Stockton's friend and Winnell's teacher since he was a child. They have a good relationship. Lord explained to the boy that Butler is his childhood friend. They were always together as kids. He is his best friend. Butler greeted ID. He asked him if the lad had come to the castle to take the novice tinker's test. Butler examined the first apprentice and praised him for his good physical fitness. Then, Butler lowered his head down and saw Xiaowen there. He inquired to the Lord, was this really his grandson? Xiaowen said hello to Butler. The Lord introduced Xiaowen, saying that he is the son of one of the farmers in his territory, and he has a talent for magic. He wants him to enter the magic tower and study. Butler began to examine Xiaowen. The guy thought he wouldn't be believed again. Butler laughed at the top of his voice. He said that there were indeed many talented people in their manor since Winnell even had a mage apprentice. Butler suggested that the boys go rest after the long journey and leave the luggage to him. Lord and Butler stayed in the bar, drinking alcohol. Lord told Butler what had happened to them during the road. It seemed to Lord that the Duke's patience was exhausted. Butler said that this time the Dukes had overreached. He asked the Lord what happened afterward. Was there any other suspicious movement? The Lord, finishing the wine in his glass, said there was nothing more. He thinks the assassin this time was their last warning against him. Butler asked him what he planned to do next. If this continued, the end could be grim. The Lord replied that that was why he was sending Xiaowen to the magic tower. If he could handle it and become a magician's apprentice, perhaps no one would dare mention his territory anymore. Butler asked, what if Xiaowen doesn't succeed? The Lord replied that all hope was in him. Lord stated that he has to protect his territory. This is their home, and he will not let anyone destroy it. The next day came. Having breakfast at the table, the boy asked the Lord if they had already sent them a letter yesterday, when would the magical association answer them? The Lord, munching on a loaf of bread, replied that in 3 days, the magic tower would probably only receive the letter. Guy sighed, saying that the delivery was very slow. He wouldn't mind causing a tailwind. The Lord asked the fellow what a tailwind is. The guy replied that it's a type of magic that can deliver items. The Lord turned to ID. He said that he should be able to answer the artisan's test very quickly, so he would have a chance to take the exam in a few days. ID thanked the Lord. After breakfast, the Lord and the boys went to the city. Walking through the busy streets, the boy thought that in his past life, he might not have been able to go outside for several years. Ida noticed a street vendor. He inquired as to why they still had them at Castle Lewis. The Lord replied that no matter what city they go to, there will always be street vendors. You just have to be both careful and lucky, and sometimes you can find something worthwhile from them. The Lord began to tell the boys stories about his adventures in the city. ID listened to him intently. The boy thought that Lord had brought them to the city just for the sake of nostalgia. While walking around the city, Xiaowen noticed something. On the counter of a street vendor, he noticed an interesting piece of iron. He had definitely seen this item somewhere before. The iron on the counter looked like grimoire plate. The boy motioned for the Lord to stop. Looking puppy-eyed at the Lord, he asked him to buy him something he needed for magic. The Lord replied that he would gladly buy the lad what he wanted. The Lord and the boys approached the street vendor. Xiao En, making an innocent appearance, was examining the entire contents of the shop. The slyly smiling vendor asked the guy what he was looking for. The guy, pointing to the grimoire plates, asked the merchant, "What is this stuff?" The merchant thought for a moment. After a little thought, he replied that it was treasure. He told me that he found it when he was exploring the ruins. He began to complain about how hard he had worked to get it all. The Lord asked the merchant how much he was willing to give the iron for. The merchant replied that for just 1 gold coin, they could take all his treasures off the counter. The Lord grabbed the merchant by the collar and told him that he wanted to fool the poor child. He offered him 5 silver coins for all his junk. The merchant agreed to the Lord's offer. Xiaowen, with a satisfied smile on his face, carried a bag full of junk. Ida asked the guy why he wanted to buy all this stuff. After all, these things weren't worth 5 silver pieces. They were cheated by that merchant, Ida said. Xiaowen continued to walk smiling. Ida told Xiaoen that the 5 silver they earned at the forge in a month, he made the Lord spend a lot of money. The Lord said that it was actually not much. It wouldn't make him poorer in any way. The satisfied guy asked Ida to guess what exactly he wanted to buy out of all this. Ida wondered. Looking into the bag, he saw a book. He guessed that it was what Xiaoen wanted to buy. The guy replied that this book wasn't worth the money. With nothing else on his mind, ID asked the guy to tell him what he really wanted to buy. Looking around, the guy made sure there was no one around. He asked ID to stand closer. Xiaoen started to say something in ID's ear. While listening to Xiaoen, Ida heard something about magic. He was ready to scream from what he heard, but the Lord and the guy covered his mouth. Ida apologized for not being able to contain his emotion. The Lord said it was okay. He suggested to go back to the hostel. Back to the hostel, the guy showed what he really wanted to buy. The guy took 2 plates of grimoire in his hands. He said that these 2 iron plates were magical. Examining the plates, Ida asked the guy if he was sure about it. The Lord, examining the plates, found some patterns on them. The guy said that he was absolutely sure that there was definitely some magical information in them. As for the information, he wants to try to research. The Lord told the guy that he is really very amazing. Ida asked the Lord, what is the real price of these magic records? The Lord replied that anything related to magic is hard to buy with money. If someone wanted to sell them to the magic tower, each one could be sold for at least 100 gold coins. Idi's eyes bulged at the amount he... The Lord asked Idi not to disturb Xiaoen and sent him off to go study for the exam. The boy looked at the records. He knew that their real value was much more than just 100 gold coin. Taking one of the plates in his hands, he felt a particle of magical power. He became curious. What kind of information was in here? Or maybe it's some kind of mental training method? To begin with, the guy tried using mental spirit power. The guy tried to infuse the mental spirit power into the plate. After a moment, he flung the plate away from him. He felt an intense pain in his heart. The guy fell to the floor. He didn't realize what the feeling was. His head was splitting and his heart was bursting. Before it was too late, the guy decided to enter the virtual space. He pulled his hand up to the bag that contained the virtual glasses. Alice was waiting for the guy in the virtual space. She was ready to help him. After meeting the guy in space, Alice put him on the bunk. After analyzing, she found that the guy's body was heating up, his breathing was very rapid, and his heart was bursting. This time, the guy was too fast. Healing the guy, Alice explained to him that before using mental spirit power, He should have let her scan those magic plates. The half-dead guy told Alice that when he used his mental spirit power to touch the magic plate, he felt as if he was being sucked into the plate. All his mental power was sucked into the plate. Alice said that the guy overestimated himself, and what happened to him was the effect of a lack of mental fortitude. Any mistake and he could have died. The guy thought about Alice's word. Alice decided to explain to the guy in a simple way that mental fortitude is the magical power of this world. You could even say that it is his soul. If all of his mental spirit power is sucked out, it's like having his soul sucked out. He would just become a zombie without the ability to think. The boy pushed the plate away from him. He thanked Alice for reacting quickly, which made it all go away. The guy asked Alice how he could study the 2 iron plates then. Alice scanned the plates and told the guy that it looked like something high level was written on them. With his current mental fortitude, he wouldn't be able to understand the content. If he continued to evolve as well, it would take him about another year or so to learn them. After finding out how long it would take, the guy huffed. Alice asked the guy not to worry, as the time would pass quickly. Xiaowen recalled that when he was attacked by the assassin, Alice had told him that she sensed killing intent. Alice replied that it was a data storage ability. The guy inquired, wasn't her information storage data destroyed? Alice replied that the basic information was destroyed, but the special information remained. The guy asked her what the special information was. Alice asked him not to question her, because he wouldn't understand anyway. The guy got even more curious. Alice said he didn't need it, and then she asked why he was suddenly asking about it. The guy replied that he wanted to learn how to sense killing intent. He asked Alice if she could help him with that. Alice remained silent in response. The guy asked her why she didn't say anything back. Alice, in response, asked why he wanted to learn how to sense killing intent. The guy lowered his gaze and replied that ever since he encountered that assassin, he feels defenseless. Even though inside the virtual space, whatever happens to him won't die, but he completely forgot that in the real world, he is an ordinary person. If Alice hadn't told him about the assassin last time, he would have just died without ever knowing how. Xiaowen told Alice that he couldn't rely on her to warn him every time he was in danger. Therefore, for the sake of his safety, he must learn to sense killing intent. Reluctantly, Alice agreed to the guy's suggestion. Xiaowen was confident to the fullest. Alice projected some kind of door, saying that he should go and experience it. She also projected a lamp that she gave to the guy. The guy went to the door. He asked Alice what was behind the door. Alice asked him to go in. He should find out for himself. The guy opened the door and went inside. As he entered the room, he looked around. Hearing some sound, he started screaming. The guy didn't realize where he was. Suddenly, the guy's body became paralyzed. He felt something. The guy felt a slight chill down his back. Behind him was a huge man with an axe. The man struck with the axe. The guy managed to jump back. The guy asked, how dare the man attack him from behind? He pointed his finger towards the man, preparing to use bullet magic. But suddenly he realized that he couldn't use magic. The guy started running away from them. He didn't know what to do. As he kept running, he saw a house up ahead. The guy hid in the house. He realized that it would only temporarily stop the man with the axe. It scared him. Maybe there was something in that house that he could use as a weapon? Looking around the house, he saw a statue of a man's head on a table. It looked creepy. Walking past it, he continued to look around. He saw a television broadcasting static. Suddenly, the TV screen showed a broadcast of a doll offering the guy to play some kind of game. Stepping away from the TV, he came across a closet with something rustling in it. After everything he had seen, the guy was already afraid to even imagine what was inside. Suddenly, an axe blade whistled over the guy's head. It was that man. He had finally found the guy. Xiaowen fainted from fear. When he woke up, he was lying on the floor beside Alice. He didn't understand what had happened to him. Alice said that she had sent him to the training room to train his sense of killing intent. Alice worriedly asked the boy how his training had gone. Had his ability to sense killing intent gotten better? Putting his hand on his head, he replied that he didn't know. He questioned Alice. Why would he have to experience something like that to train to sense killing intent? Alice replied that it was so that he could sense another's killing intent and latent hostility. He needs to experience them in a scary and dangerous environment. That's why she put him in that room. The guy asked her if that was an effective way. Alice replied that this is the most effective way. Over 100 billion reports show the same result. When a person experiences a scene of fright, they have a strong feeling and begin to realize when danger is approaching. The guy asked her, is he sure he won't get hurt because of this? Alice replied that this method poses no danger. In her database, all federal military personnel, before they go into the military, they have to experience something like this, and there are no reports of death in any of them. The guy asked Alice what other federal level, and how many were there. Alice explained to him that the federal servicemen were from the Milky Way galaxy, but the general data has been destroyed, and she doesn't know anything else. The guy, hoping to get some interesting information, got frustrated. Getting to his feet, he He said he was going to go practice some more. Alice worriedly asked where he was in a hurry. She suggested that he rest for a while. The guy opening the door of the training room said he was perfectly fine. He needs to forge iron while it's hot. He feels that the sooner he doesn't learn to sense killing intent, the sooner he can guarantee his safety. Alice looked at the boy's determined look and didn't know what to say. After the guy entered the room, Alice recalled that there were indeed no dead people after training, but there were more than 50 who went crazy. She figured since the guy didn't ask her about it, he probably didn't want to know about it. 5 days passed. Lord Stockton received the Duke's return letter. He was very glad of it. Taking the letter in his hands, the Lord eagerly opened it. The Lord went to Xiaowen's house. He knocked on his door, shouting that the magic tower had finally answered. Not waiting for the guy to answer, he decided to enter the room. Crossing the threshold of the room, he saw the guy sleeping. Walking closer to the guy, he decided to wake him up. Literally in an instant, the guy jumped off the bed. A finger with a loaded bullet was already looking towards the Lord. The Lord was frightened. He asked not to kill him. The boy apologized to the Lord. He explained to him that he thought it was someone else. The Lord, after what had happened, could barely stand on his feet. Guy never thought that with his current ability to sense killing intent, he would be able to sense if someone just approached him, even when he was sleeping. After calming down, the Lord took out a letter saying that the magic tower had responded. The Lord said that there was a mage who was willing to test the lad's magical talent. The lad was very happy about this. The lad asked the Lord when they were leaving. The Lord answered him that right away. Riding the horse, the lad asked the Lord why the magic tower was built outside the city. The Lord laughed. He explained that mages are a separate caste of people. They naturally want to find a place where they can study magic in peace. The Lord said that they would arrive at the place soon. He asked the boy to look at the horizon. There was a magic tower up ahead. The lad was surprised at the size of the magic tower. It was very large. That explained why the tower was built outside the city. The Lord told him that such a distance between the city and the magic tower was not much for mages. Even if the city was attacked by the enemy, they could simply teleport anything there, as well as prevent a magical experiment from affecting the city. Upon reaching the tower, they were met by a man. He said they were just in time. The man looked at the boy. He asked the guy if he was Xiaowen. The guy greeted the man and said that he was. Yaowen noticed that the man had a dim energy wave. The Lord bowed to the mage, saying that he would leave them. The mage did not object. The Lord mounted his horse and wished the lad success in the exam. Then he rode off. Saying goodbye to the Lord, the mage asked the boy if they could go. The lad felt embarrassed and replied in agreement. The mage asked the boy to follow him to the magic tower. His teacher was already waiting for the guy. The guy didn't expect that the inside, the tower, was even bigger than the outside. Following the man up the flight of stairs, Xiaowen noticed that the man was very quiet. He decided that it would be best not to try to talk to him. After they went up to the second floor, the guy noticed many small rooms there. There were magic waves coming from those rooms. Some of the magic waves were even stronger than the man who was accompanying the guy. Continuing upward, they stopped at the 5th floor. Approaching one of the rooms, the man knocked on the door. Xiaowen was looking forward to meeting a true mage. The door started to open. Stepping inside the room, the guy saw a man looking out the window. The man who brought the guy to him introduced the man looking out the window. This man would be the examiner for Xiaowen's upcoming exam. The man turned out to be the great magician Mo Lun. Xiaowen, looking at the mage, noticed something. He had incredibly powerful magic power. The guy felt a strong pressure. He realized what a real magician was. The great magician Mo Lun called out to the boy. Mo Lun glared at him menacingly, but Xiaowen did not lower his gaze. After examining Xiaowen, Mo Lun said that although he had magic talent, but unfortunately, it was not enough. Mo Lun explained to the guy that his talent was the lowest rank among all the mage disciples. Even if he practiced hard, he wouldn't be able to become an official mage. Mo Lun suggested to the lad, if he wanted, he could stay in the outer forest of the magic tower, do chores, learn some spirit power training methods, and slowly develop. When he becomes an adult, he will have the opportunity to comprehend novice magic, and it will be enough to earn a living. Xiaowen sadly lowered his gaze to the floor. He couldn't believe what he had heard. Why would this mage say such things the first time they met? The guy thought. He did not like the fact that the great mage, judging by a mere glance. Sitting down at the table, the great magician asked who had written him a letter telling him about the boy's talent. The lad replied that the letter was written by Knight Stockton. This intrigued the great magician. Mo Lun replied that the knight's virtue is honest. How could he lie to him by writing this letter? Xiaowen asked the magician, how did the knight lie to him? Mo Lun replied that the knight had written to him about the guy already possessing magic. Xiaowen said that what was written in the letter was pure truth. The grand magician became angry. He asked him not to be deceived because the guy's mental fortitude was very weak. How could he comprehend magic with such a tiny talent? Xiaowen showed the Grand Mage his talent. He gathered a wisp of wind on his fingertip into a bullet. Molun, upon seeing this, recognized that the guy really knew how to use magic. Xiaowen added that he was only fluent in this spell. Frowning, Molun asked, "What does he mean by this? Does he really know any other spells?" The guy replied that he knew some other spell, but hadn't really mastered it yet. After Alice analyzed the acid spell, Xiaowen never started practicing. Most of his time was spent on sensing killing intent. Molun walked closer to the guy to get a closer look at the guy's spell. After looking closer, he realized that it was a wind magic spell. Xiaowen was satisfied. He had managed to catch the attention of the great mage. The guy confirmed the mage's words, saying that he had learned a wind magic spell called bullet magic. Molun waved his hands and offered to use the spell on himself, spicing up the incident that happened to the guy on the way to Louis Castle. Xiaowen warned the Grand Mage that the power of this shot could kill a person. Rolling his eyes, Mo Louis suggested that the lad test the spell using a table as a target. Bowing to the great magician, the guy said that he was ready to begin. Mo Louis said that he was also willing to see the guy's ability. But before starting, the great magician warned the guy that the table was made of solid wood, and he even added a magical reinforcement to it. Before the great magician could finish speaking, a bullet from the guy's finger, with a powerful shot, flew into the table. The shot made a small hole in the table. Molun couldn't believe it. With a dumbfounded look, Molun looked at the guy. He couldn't contain his emotions after seeing this. Pulling himself together, Molun said that the destructive power of the bullet magic that the guy demonstrated shouldn't be so strong. Xiaowen couldn't tell him that it was magic that had been altered by artificial intelligence. The guy asked the magician, what did he do wrong? Molun replied that this spell was very different from others like it. It had a more powerful force. The great magician inquired, where did the guy learn it? The boy took out a grimoire. He said his teacher was an artisan, and he told him it was a magic book. The great magician asked Xiaowen, did he himself learn what was written in this book? The boy replied that he did. He was self-taught. The great magician looked menacingly at the boy and said that he was lying. The boy said he wasn't lying. Molun sensed from the record book Xiaowen was holding that it wasn't his bullet magic. The guy admitted that there was a slightly different spell in the book, but he changed it to bullet magic. The Grand Magician asked, how did he do that? Xiaowen replied that he didn't fully know himself. The guy tried to explain how he did it, but Molun didn't understand. The Grand Magician asked the guy why he used the record book as a material to repair the magic weapon. The guy replied that he had fully studied the records, so he used them to repair the magic weapon. The Grand Magician was shocked. The guy's words were so reasonable that he couldn't counter him with anything. The guy asked the mage what he had done wrong again. The great mage replied that everything was fine. He just didn't expect the lad to have such courage at such a young age. He asked the boy if he could use the spells again. The boy replied that unfortunately he couldn't. His mental fortitude only allowed him to release magic once. The great mage smiled. It was just as he had envisioned. The guy's spirit power is so small that it can't comprehend the training of magic. He asked the guy, with such a small spirit power, how was he able to learn magic? After all, the guy's magic release skills were honed to a perfect level, as if he had practiced tens of thousands of times. The guy became very nervous. He didn't know what to say to the great magician. Molun told the guy that every time a person wanted to release magic, he had to visualize in his mind and use magical spirit power to create an image of magic and direct the flow of energy. Every time one tries, whether success or failure, one must use the mental spirit power to create magic. In such a situation, if the magician wants to master magic, the power of the mental spirit he possesses must be greater than that required to release magic by 10 or even 100 times. The bullet magic the guy used seemed to have formed instantly. It wasn't just practicing a dozen times. According to the strength of the guy's mental spirit, the amount of time he needs to reach this level of skill is at least a few years, maybe more. The guy took his gaze away from the mage. He didn't know what to say to him. Molun said that since the guy didn't want to tell him, then so be it. He allowed him to stay in the magic tower since no matter what, he saw the guy's talent. Realizing that the interrogation was over, the lad exhaled. Looking out the window, the great mage said he had thought of something. He asked the lad if he would be willing to be his apprentice. The boy was taken away from his speech. With all his might, he shouted out that he wanted to become the great magician's apprentice very badly. Smiling, the great magician replied that Xiaowen is now the magician's official disciple. He hoped that the guy would be able to surprise him in the future. The boy's eyes glistened. He promised he wouldn't let the great magician down. The great magician called the man who brought the boy to him. He called him Danny and asked him to escort Xiaowen to the 7th floor. From now on, he was his disciple. Danny asked Xiaowen to follow him. Walking up, the guy noticed that Danny had become more polite after the guy was accepted as the mage's apprentice. Reaching the room, Danny asked Xiao-En if he minded staying here. The guy replied that he was okay with it. Danny told Xiao-En that he would be staying in this room from today. If he needs anything, he can ring the bell. He will definitely get help, whether it's food or a shower. He can order any clothes of his liking, and they will be sure to prepare everything for him. Entering the room, the guy thanked Mr. Dunny. The man said that he can just be called Mr. Dunny. He is a simple assistant who Mr. Molun allowed to stay here and study. The guy was surprised. He thought that except for the mage, everyone in the tower was a mage apprentice. Danny replied that the mage tower has a level distribution. In the tower, members are categorized into 3 types: mage, mage apprentice, and mage assistant. Danny revealed that before Xiao-En came, there were only 5 magician disciples. Inside the Moon Magic Tower, they all possess extremely high magical talent, so Molun recognized them and took them as disciples. In time, they have the opportunity to become official magicians that people admire so much, and people like Danny were just chosen by magician Molun as assistant. Although the helpers have magical talent, their talent is usually low, which is why they became helpers who are overlooked by the official mages. Assistants have 2 options. The first is to give up studying magic and try their hand at another profession. The other option is to stay. Although many give up, most still retain a little hope, wanting to try in their lives whether they can master magic and become official mages. Of course, among the helpers, those who fulfill their wishes are very few. The helpers live in the forest surrounding the magic tower, said Danny with a lowered gaze. Danny added that there were few first-level magic and basic techniques for cultivating mental spirit power in the forest. It was now clear to Xiao-En why at the very beginning, Grand Magician Mo Lun had suggested him to live in the forest. Almost all mage assistants can't bear to fail when moving to the 7th level of assistant. After they comprehend a first-level magic spell, or maybe even 1 or 2 second-level magic spells, they would leave the forest. But despite this, someone who has mastered a 2nd-level spell is also a mage in the eyes of the people, who has freedom and is essentially at the level of an apprentice mage. They can try their luck, whether it be in the army or by going as mercenaries, even becoming adventurers. They will also be very popular and respected. After finishing the story, Danny congratulated Xiao-En, for he was now the 6th mage apprentice in the Magic Tower. Danny said that Xiao-En could now hire people to be his assistant. Xiao-En asked Danny, "What do assistant mage apprentices do?" Danny replied that they would serve him and help him with his daily chores. They can also help him prepare some simple magic materials. Essentially, assistants are just servants. Out of embarrassment, the guy laughed. Danny said that Xiao-En, according to his credentials, could hire himself 2 assistants, among whom could be his acquaintances. Xiao-En rejoiced at this information. Danny asked him if he had any acquaintances he wanted to hire. Xiao-En hesitated. He replied that he didn't know who to choose yet. Afterward, Xiao-En said that after he thought about it, he would let Danny know his choice, but for now, Danny could be free. Left alone in the room, the boy exhaled. He had finally gotten into the Magic Tower and had become a magician's apprentice. And he also realized that in the world of mages, there was also a lot of injustice. Mo Lun arranged the books on the shelves. Then he used some obscure magic. After a while, the great magician headed somewhere. Walking along the Magic Tower, he stopped and shouted loudly, "The way!" Someone responded to Mo Lun's shout. The person who responded asked him to wait because he was conducting an experiment. The Grand Magician had no intention of waiting for the manic research. Mo Lun created a magic circle underneath, after which he jumped up high. After landing on one of the floors, he was met by Dawei. The Grand Magician said that the 3-star magician Dawei had gotten out in time. Dawei asked Mo Lun, speaking without sarcasm. Inviting the Grand Magician to the table, Dawei said that his servant, just now, sent him tea and milk. The Great Magician envied Dawei because his servant always sent him very good things. Dawei asked Mo Lun, "What is he worried about?" Mo Lun choked on his tea at the spontaneity of the question. He asked Dawei, how did he know he was worried? Dawei laughed in response, saying that he could tell by the look on his face. The Great Magician said that today he had accepted a disciple. His talent was very bad. He had never seen a worse magical talent before. Dawei was surprised. He asked the Great Magician, why did he take a guy with such a bad talent as a disciple? Was it by any chance that he was related to him? Then, Dawei recalled that the Great Magician was an orphan. Mo Lun's eyes started to water at Dawei's word. The Grand Magician explained that he took him in because even though his talent was poor, he used a modified magic spell in front of him. This got Dawei interested. He asked, what kind of spell did the guy use exactly? A cutting spell, replied the Great Magician. He said that the guy called it bullet magic, and it had a much more powerful force than the original spell. The most interesting thing was that after his spell touched the target, it would burst. Dawei couldn't believe it. He asked, where did the guy learn this? The Grand Magician replied that from a magic book, and he was self-taught. Dawei asked, where is this magic book located? The Grand Magician replied that unfortunately the guy was a craftsman before, and he used the magic book to repair magical weapons. The Grand Magician added that this child's magic power was only enough to cast a magic spell once, but he was able to use it instantly. Molun said that if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it either. A 10-year-old child with poor magical talent was able to comprehend magic at such a level. It was simply impossible. Dawei began to guess why the Great Magician had come. He asked Molun if he really thought it was okay to let the kid use this magic. A silence appeared at the table. The two magicians looked at each other. The Grand Mage explained that with the kid's talent, he thought that the one was the most suitable. Dawei warned Molun that he should think carefully. If the guy can't become a real magician, learning this type of magic won't help him. The Grand Mage offered to discuss it with the guy. Xiao En was lying on the bed, thinking about whether he should tell Knight Stockton that he had become a magician's apprentice. Maybe he had already been told about it? Suddenly, the boy heard a voice telling him to go up to the 9th floor. Going up to the 9th floor, the guy became interested in the magic through which the voice sounded. Reaching the place, the guy knocked on the door. He was asked to enter. The Great Magician introduced to the lad a man who stood beside him. The man turned out to be his old friend Dawei, and he is a 3-star magician. Xiaoen bowed his head in front of the 3-star magician. Dawei greeted the guy. He didn't think Xiaoen was so young. Dawei told the boy what he had heard from Molun, that the boy had already mastered the magic spell. The guy confirmed the Great Magician's words. Dawei asked Xiaoen to demonstrate the spell to him. The guy asked the teacher for permission, and the teacher gave his consent. Xiaoen began to gather air around his finger. Squeezing the air into a bullet, the guy fired a shot. Dawei liked the demonstration. He asked the guy if he knew any other magic spell. The guy replied that he also knew an acid spell, but he had never used it before, so he was unlikely to be able to demonstrate it now. Dawei said that the guy was really talented. The guy's magic power is only enough to use one spell, and yet there are very few people here who can reach that level with that kind of magic power. The Grand Magician corrected Dawei, saying that the guy is one and only. The Grand Magician asked the guy not to be mistaken about it. Xiaoen said he wouldn't, and thanked the Great Magician for recognizing him. Molun explained to the guy that ever since he became his disciple, they had become a family. In fact, the guy's talent for self-learning seems to be pretty good. Molun warned the guy that he should be prepared. He would have a lot of difficulties in the future when using magic spells. The guy responded by saying that difficulties didn't scare him. The Great Magician laughed out loud. He explained to the lad that there are many types of magic spells. He asked the lad what type of spell he planned to focus on. The guy replied that he wasn't very good at magic. He asked Molun to help him. The Great Magician wondered about the guy's talent. He determined that the guy had an excellent perception and affinity ability. It was his unique talent. He explained to him that it was because of this, he could easily comprehend magic even when his magic power was less than needed. This ability would be the basis for the guy's type. Under the guidance of the two teachers, the guy finally understood some things related to magic. For example, the power of magic spells increases and decreases depending on the magic power used. It is distributed into 10 levels. And even if it's the same level of magic, it also differs regarding the release of magic power. Even if the difference in low-level magic can't be seen, the gap will gradually increase after increasing the level of magic power. High-level magic can consume more magic power but be weaker than mid-level magic. But, in fact, high-level magic power is not something that mid-level magic power can compare to. According to the thoughts of the Great Magician Molun, Xiao En should choose that magic spell that consumes less magic power. This way it would be better for the guy's future development. While reading the book, the guy remembered Alice. He realized that he didn't really have any special abilities to learn. If it wasn't for her in virtual space, he wouldn't have the opportunity to practice more than a few million times. The boy asked the Great Mage what type of magic he should study. The Great Magician said that he had discussed it with Dawei, and they had found a suitable option. That option turned out to be summoning an element. The Grand Magician explained that among all types of magic, the power of element summoning was very strong, and it had the lowest consumption of magical energy. The boy couldn't understand. Since element summoning consumes less magical energy, and the power is super strong, why then do not all mages choose this type of magic to study? The Great Magician replied that this type of magic also has its own condition. The element summoning type has powerful strength and less consumption of magical energy, but at the same time, it is the most difficult magic that the whole world recognizes. Molun explained that a mage needed to have a high learning ability to be able to learn this magic. The boy asked the Great Magician if he had also learned the type of element summoning Molun replied that the element summoning magic, he knew the very least. Dawei complimented the great magician's word, saying that Molun had been studying element summoning magic for many years. And even after he officially became a one-star magician, he doesn't dare to tell others that he can successfully use the element summoning spell, the words Dawei said, embarrassed the great mage. The guy was a little scared to learn how complicated a spell he would have to learn. The great magician laughed. He asked where all the guy's motivation had gone. Does he really want to give up without even trying? Xiaoen replied that he was ready to start learning element summoning even right now. Dawei added that the guy's talent is very unique. With him, he should learn this magic. The guy thanked Dawei for his support. He said that he wouldn't disappoint them and would learn the element summoning magic. Molun brought a stack of magic books that had the basic information and the basics of element summoning magic. He handed the books to the guy. The guy, barely holding the huge stack of books, thanked the great magician. Molun guaranteed that element summoning magic was the most interesting spell because it had many transformations. He promised the guy that he would enjoy it. After telling the boy everything in detail, the great magician allowed him to go and study. He said that if he had any problems, he and Dawei would help him at any time. Dawei added that he shouldn't rely on them too much, as they didn't know much about this type of magic spell either. He advised the guy to use his specialty. The guy didn't understand what specialty Dawei was talking about. The two mages, laughing loudly, said that the guy's specialty was self-learning. From that moment, Xiaoen began his journey of becoming a mage. He never stopped practicing his morning exercises. Gradually, by practicing with Alice, he had completed a complete set of morning exercises for beginners. This allowed him to stop time for even longer. He now had more time and energy to practice his mental power and element summoning spell. An entire year had passed since the guy started his training in the magic tower. Xiaoen was sitting in his room. As he sipped his tea, he thought about how he had unexpectedly entered the magic tower and became a magician's apprentice. The boy was asked to go to the great magician. Finishing his tea, he said he would be right with him. The guy walked to Molun's room and knocked on the door. He was asked to come in. The guy entered the room. The grand magician asked to let him test his mental spirit power. Running his hand over the lad's head, the great mage determined that his mental spirit power was still quite weak, but there was a noticeable progress. It was almost double what it was when he first came to the great mage. The boy thanked the teacher for his help. Molun replied that there was no need to thank him. He had only gotten better due to his talent and hard training. After checking the lad's mental fortitude strength, the grand mage asked him about the element summoning spell. The lad replied that he was still learning the spell. The great magician was once again convinced that the element summoning magic was too complicated and confusing. According to the magic book, the element summoning magic originated back in the ancient era. In that era, an alchemist who comprehended magic originally researched mechanics and other techniques. When he investigated the structure of a living being, there was no material he wanted, so he tried another way. He chose a magical element as the material. He used powerful mental spirit power to compress the magic element. In the end, the material was obtained. But because of the peculiarity of the magic element, the element must be compressed at one time. Otherwise, it would explode. But the most difficult thing about the magic element summoning magic was not the mental magic power, but the structure of this object that was the element. Xiaoen, with the help of Alice, tried to memorize the location of the structure of the object, but it was too tedious and painful. After many attempts, he discovered that the summoning element had its own compression feat. Even two low-rank magics, when mixed and compressed, were as strong as a high-rank magic. But to completely remember the steps and actions, the details, to realize and perfectly release it is a very troublesome and difficult thing to do. It could be said that normal people would mostly not choose to study this magic and focus on mastering it, but fortunately, Xiaoen was not a normal person. He has Alice. He could keep things simple and take his time. In the virtual space, learning any kind of magic does not utilize mental spirit power. With this feature, wielding magic is nothing special to him, no difficulties at all. He had already practiced the magic he knew countless times under Alice's guidance. This allows him to fully master this type of magic. Unknowingly, during this year, he has mastered 7 magic spells. All of them are first-level magic, but his current overall mental spirit and skill is too low for that. If teacher found out, the entire magic world would be shocked. And among the 7 magics he has comprehended, the strongest one is the altered element summoning spell. After many attempts, the guy managed to create an elemental summoning spell. Xiaoen was practicing in his room. Danny knocked on his door, asking him to come in. Upon entering the room, Danny apologized for disturbing him. Xiaoen replied that it was fine. He asked Danny what was wrong since he had come to see him. Taking out an envelope from his pocket, Danny replied that the guy had received a letter. The boy, taking the envelope in his hands, was very happy, for it was from the Knight of Stockton. Opening the envelope, the boy thought about what could have happened. Because it had been a whole year, Knight Stockton couldn't just write a letter. Xiao En had warned Danny to bring letters from Knight Stockton in the future as soon as they arrived. After reading the contents in the letter, the guy told Danny that he might have to leave the tower for a while. He asked Danny what he had to do that. Danny replied that the guy just needed to inform the mage Mo Lun. Danny gave Xiao En a plate and asked him to put it on. The guy inquired, "What is this for?" Danny replied that it was a magical identification plate, something like a token of their magic tower. The guy put the plate on his chest. As he left the magic tower, he thought about the fact that he had never left the tower in a whole year. The boy rushed the knight towards Louis's castle. Running down the road at great speed, he was spotted by 3 travelers. They didn't understand how a man could move at such speed, but after taking a closer look at him, they realized that it was a mage. Xiao En noticed something. He stopped his movement. The guy saw the gate to the castle in front of him. As he approached the gate, the people standing in line let him pass through. As he approached the checkpoint, everyone looked at the guy with rapt attention. He was embarrassed by so many stares. Upon reaching the checkpoint, the guy was greeted by the guards. Xiao En was very uncomfortable. He wasn't used to being treated like this by mages yet. Suddenly, his happy smile disappeared from his face. He remembered that he was in too much of a hurry and forgot the money to pay the city tax at the checkpoint. The guards replied that there was no need for the money. Since Xiao En is a mage, he doesn't need to pay the city tax. The guy thanked the guard. After entering the castle grounds, the guy went to Uncle Butler's place. Entering the bar, he saw Butler behind the bar. Butler was happy to see the guy arrive. The lad told Butler that he had come to the castle at the request of the Knight of Stockton. Butler replied that the knight was here for a whole week. Butler and Xiao En headed towards the knight's room. Upon reaching the room, Butler called out to him. The knight, at this time, was finishing a bottle of wine. The boy walked into the room and greeted the Stockton knight. The knight couldn't believe that the guy had come to see him. Stockton cried with happiness. The knight threw himself on the guy with a big hug. He missed him very much. The lad replied that he came as soon as he read the letter. Looking at the crying knight, the guy inquired what was wrong with him. The knight asked Xiao En if he remembered the assassin from last time. The guy replied that of course he remembered. It was the first assassination attempt on him. After wiping away his tears, the knight explained to the guy that he had provoked one nobleman, Count Robin Lin. The knight said that a year ago, when they were able to resolve the matter, he thought that the earl had decided to give up the magic spell. According to Knight's assumptions, the count must have known about the apprentice mage from his estate. That's why he didn't dare to act. But last month, the count started causing trouble again. Xiao En asked the knight what kind of problems was the count causing. The knight told the guy that Count Robin Lin had hired someone and started threatening him to give up the magic spell. Xiao En asked, "Who did the count hire?" The knight sighed heavily. The guy was starting to guess who he was talking about. Stockton looked hopelessly at the guy. He said that the count hired a magician's assistant. Xiao En became wary. The guy suggested that the count hired a magician's assistant through connection. He asked the knight how strong was this magician's assistant. The knight replied that this person had been an assistant to Creighton, a 2-star magician, for 20 years. Although his talent was so-so and he had no hope of advancement, Mage Creighton let him finish his training as an assistant. Guy said thoughtfully that although he was an assistant mage, he had studied magic for 20 years. Guy asked the knight, "What does this Robin Lin plan to do then? Doesn't he want to use magic to kill Stockton?" The Stockton knight replied that the count wouldn't dare to do something so presumptuous, so he came up with a cunning plan. The count wants to force the magician's assistant he brought in to have a magical duel against the guy. He wants to use the magic duel to decide who owns the magic spell. Butler gets into a conversation between the knight and the guy. He said the earl is out of line. To find a 20-year-old magician's assistant to bully a year-old magician's apprentice, that was only fit for a freak. The knight's head was pounding with all this trouble. He already wanted to pass the magic spell because keeping him close to him, he can't protect him. Butler explained to the knight that the mage Tarini is like a god for their country. He should think hard. If he pissed off the great mage Tarini, he would be in much more serious trouble. Stockton cried out that he has no other choice. He couldn't rely only on Xiao En forever. The knight finally decided that he would give the magic spell to the count. But Xiao En objected. He said that he would participate in the magic duel and protect the Stockton knight. The knight and Butler couldn't believe it. The boy asked to go and tell the count that he was agreeing to the magical range. The next day, they went to the count's house. They were met by the guards who guard the count's house. The guards said that Count Robin Lin was already waiting for them inside the house. Upon entering the house, the count met them, along with the magician's assistant. The knight and the boy bowed down. Xiao En had a completely different idea of the count robbing everything by force. A conversation ensued between the knight and the count. At this time, the magician's assistant and Xiao En were scrutinizing each other. The guy examined his opponent and recognized that the mage assistant's mental fortitude was indeed stronger than his. The Count introduced the assistant magician. His name was Dilin. Dilin greeted the guy, saying that he had completed the magic tower Creighton. Xiaowen also introduced himself, saying that he had just entered Mage Malun's magic tower and had become his disciple. What the guy said shocked Diling. The Count asked him what was the matter. Diling replied that Xiaowen had a higher status than him. The guy replied that it didn't make any difference. Afterward, the four of them went to the training arena. Diling approached Xiaowen, saying that he had a proposal. Xiaowen was interested. After arriving at the training ground, the Count suggested that the mages should have a peaceful magic duel. Diling and Xiaowen agreed to the Count's proposal. The Count announced the start of the duel. Now, there was nowhere to go. Dilin suggested Xiaowen to start first. The guy accepted his offer. He thought that Dilin wanted to know his true strength. Xiaowen inhaled the air with all his lungs. Although he possessed 7 magics of the same level, but with his current magic power, he could only use 3 spells. The first spell he decided to use was the one he wielded best. It was bullet magic. With an accurate shot, he shattered the dummy into splinters. Stockton's night was filled with hope. He saw that the guy had practiced his bullet magic well. Diling, seeing the guy's spell, hesitated. He asked the guy if he had really only studied magic for a year. The guy replied that it was exactly a year and no more. Xiaowen suggested to Dilin to demonstrate his skills. Diling pointed his finger towards the dummy. Then, he applied magic into the wind sword. A huge wave of wind headed towards the mannequin. The Count and the Knight were discouraged by what they saw. The guy thought for a moment. If we only take strength into consideration, it is definitely stronger. The wind sword magic has a stronger power than the bullet magic. But bullet magic is an instant magic attack, while wind sword magic takes a few seconds to release. If it was a magic duel, Xiaowen would definitely win. The guy wondered what Dilin thought about it. Dilin replied that there was a draw in this round. He asked Xiaowen if he agreed with his opinion. The guy didn't even doubt that Dilin wouldn't even recognize reality, but he decided to agree to a draw. The 2 magicians decided to have another round. This time, Diling volunteered to be the first to start. He pointed his hands towards the dummy. On his palms, magic power began to accumulate. After a couple seconds, the dummy burst into flames. The Knight and the Count were once again surprised by Dilin's ability. Dilin eagerly waited for Xiaowen's response to his flame magic. Xiaowen praised Dilin's abilities, saying that he was indeed strong. Xiaowen pointed his hand towards the dummy. His hand was firm, and there was confidence in his eyes. After a moment, the dummy was completely covered in slime. Xiaowen looked at Dilin for a moment, then said that the effect of the spell was not as strong as he expected. Then asked Dilin, what did he think about it? Dilin couldn't believe that the guy had once again used an instant spell and even long-range acid magic. Xiaowen once again asked Dilin what he thought about the second round. Dilin once again referred to a draw. Xiaowen only laughed at him in response. The Stockton Knight had hoped for the guy to the last. He was his last hope. The Knight stared intently at the Count. He didn't understand his intentions. After taking a little breather, the mages agreed to the third round. Xiaowen warned Dilin that his current mental magic power only allowed him to use 3 magic spells. If the third round was a draw, he would have to use a magic core to restore his mental magic power. Diling thanked the guy for being honest. The 2 magicians began to decide how they would determine the winner of the third round. Dilin pointed to a dummy surrounded by a magic shield. He explained that he had covered the dummy with a layer of magical protection. He allowed the guy to use the magic core to recover magic power. Then, Diling said that if within 3 magic spells, Xiaowen could destroy the magic shield, it would be considered his victory over him.